The scorching sun baked the cracked earth. Dust swirled in the wind as the relentless drought brought daily temperatures of 40 to 50 degrees. It completely altered Earth's climate, disrupting the reproduction of living beings. And it affected human activities as well. The population plummeted, every day feeling like living in hell. Shinamo endured this life for 5 years. Now, he couldn't hold on any longer. His chapped lips kept bleeding. In these hellish days, death had already gripped his throat. As his consciousness blurred, he seemed to see sweet water and soft bread. Just as death descended, a crisp electronic tone exploded in his mind. The Apocalypse Divine Kingdom system forcibly activated. As blue light flashed, 10 bottles of purified water and 10 loaves of bread materialized out of thin air. He frantically lunged at the supplies, greedily devouring this life-saving miracle. Initial mission, rescue a dying survivor, and raise their loyalty to 60. The reward is highly tempting survival points and basic meat supplies. In this world where saving someone might get you bitten back. He initially wanted to refuse, but the word meat made him hesitate. The system precisely marked the target, 300 meters to the right front. The Vulture gang was chasing a woman, now cornered by 3 machete-wielding thugs in a dead end. In the ruins alley dead end, Sulan had nowhere to escape. The Vulture gang members taunted her to hand over the food. Shinamo crouched and sneaked closer, his eyes locked onto a crumbling wall at the alley entrance. He deliberately kicked a stone to reveal himself, waving bread to provoke the thugs. Facing the irresistible temptation, the gang members rushed into the shadow of the unstable wall. Shinamo seized the moment and kicked the support beam. With a thunderous crash, the 3 thugs were instantly buried under rubble. Shinamo quickly stepped forward, helping the shaken Sulan up.
Here.
Thank you.
Sulan possessed a supernatural culinary talent called Divine Tongue, but her current loyalty was only 40. Shinamo wasted no words, directly carrying her weakened form to retreat quickly. Because distant roars of the Vulture gang's reinforcements were already approaching, Shinamo took Sulan deep into the ruins to hide, firmly covering her mouth. The air froze at that moment. Chaotic footsteps lingered just outside the wall. In the early morning ruins hideout, Shinamo slept soundly. Sulan curled up in a corner, clutching a half-empty bottle of water. Her brows slightly furrowed when suddenly, an urgent mission appeared. Rescue the second dying survivor. Loyalty greater than or equal to 50. Time limit, 15 minutes. Reward, survival points times 100.
Again.
Ignoring Sulan's confusion, Shinamo dove into the ruins, following the system's navigation, and frantically rushed toward a dilapidated house. A strong smell of blood hit him. A man, Xiaokua, covered in blood, was leaning against the wall. At his feet lay 4 corpses with gruesome deaths. Xiaokua forced himself to stay alert, hoarsely issuing a warning to stay away. Shinamo knew time was tight. Without hesitation, he spent survival points to exchange for a medkit, tossing it in front of Xiaokua. His terms were simple and direct. Patch yourself up, then we work together. He would provide survival supplies. All Xiaokua could strength. The footsteps of the Vulture gang search team were already close. Shinamo made a final offer of trust. Xiaokua, originally weak and exhausted, suddenly sharpened his gaze. He forced his heavy body up, grabbing a rusted steel pipe. The moment 2 search team members barged in, Xiaokua moved. Like a wounded tiger, he wildly swung the pipe, knocking out one of the searchers with a heavy blow. Shinamo was stunned by his textbook display of lethal skill. System, Xiaokua's loyalty skyrocketed to 50. The rescue mission was a complete success. Shinamo brought Xiaokua back to the basement. When Sulan handed him sweet water, Xiaokua, this unyielding man, gave Shinamo a deep look. I owe you my life. The area was surrounded by the Vulture gang. Immediate relocation to Sulan's former farm was advised. The trio moved to a temporary hideout in the wild. Gathered around a fire, Sulan displayed the terrifying talent of her divine tongue. Just by tasting the bitterness of wild grass, she precisely mixed and baked hunger-resistant biscuits. Shinamo took a bite and found they not only filled him up, but even gave a lasting sense of fullness.
Sulan, your cooking is nothing short of a miracle.
After eating, the 3 discussed their next move. Shinamo proposed a home swap plan. While the Vulture gang's main force was out searching, strike their base, launch a direct assault on the enemy's base. Sulan revealed a fatal piece of information. Vultures planted explosives at the farm's well. They would destroy large leave outsiders. 24-hour mission, seize the farm and disarm the explosives. As the members' loyalty grew stronger, the system even unlocked basic base buffs. Well water output increased by 10%. Shinamo realized that system talents were the foundation of the Divine Kingdom. Late at night, while feigning sleep, Sulan suddenly woke up. She was keen to capture the unique signal of the Vulture gang. Shinamo yanked off the light-blocking rag. Dense clusters of torchlights were moving. The Vulture gang's main force had launched an attack. This game was tense. Time was running out. At dawn outside the farm, the trio hid in the bushes, calmly observing the farm. 5 guards were lazily patrolling. Sulan pointed to the well and whispered to confirm the explosives was hidden beneath the well pulley. Xiaokua spotted a breach in the eastern wall, the only possible entry point. Shinamo quickly exchanged for exchange out of the simple smoke bomb. 3 people see the right time. Action began instantly. As the smoke bombs exploded, the guards were thrown into violent coughing and chaos. Xiaokua emerged from the smoke, steel pipe in hand, swinging deadly arcs. 3 guards were taken down in an instant. At Shimla's command, Sulan rushed to the well, her hands trembling, as she felt the explosive package under the pulley. At the last second, she successfully disarmed the fuse. Mission accomplished. The farm was recognized as a Divine Kingdom prototype. Reward easy irrigation blueprint. But the crisis wasn't over. The Lieutenant Ahu, charged out, roaring with a musket in hand. A sharp gunshot rang out, and Jiaoqua's shoulder was pierced by the bullet. Gritting through the pain, he swung his steel pipe, knocking Ahu's musket away. Chinamo followed up, pulling the crossbow trigger, landing a clean shot on Ahu's thigh. Ahu dropped to his knees, begging for mercy and despair. Chinamo narrowed his eyes, offering him a chance to live by becoming their inside man. At noon, Vulture led over 20 gang members to surround the farm. Facing the overwhelming enemy, Chinamo ordered Jiaoqua to handle defense, while Sulan needed to quickly bake stamina cookies. After swallowing the cookies, Jiaoqua, the pain inside was forcibly suppressed, and the fighting spirit surged once again. The battle to defend the farm officially began. Chinamo used the system to continuously exchange for crossbow bolts, providing long-range fire support. Jiaoqua, fighting despite his injuries, held the gate alone against 3, his movements ruthless and decisive. Seeing the strong attack fail, the Vulture roared furiously, threatening to detonate explosives to destroy the well. At the critical moment, the insider Ahu suddenly turned traitor, loudly declaring that the explosives at the well had already been removed. The Vulture panicked instantly. Seizing the opportunity, Jiaoqua knocked him down with a single strike. With their leader defeated, the remaining rabble scattered in disarray. Mission complete. The primary management interface was unlocked. As the situation stabilized, Chinamo stood by the well and announced, from today on, this place shall be renamed Mainland Camp. Sulan touched the well pulley, tears streaming down her face. The night's tranquility concealed deeper crises. While Chinamo was checking the system map, suddenly, below the map, a massive convoy was speeding closer.
The trouble isn't over yet. A bigger wolf is coming.
As the first light of dawn illuminated the farm's scarred walls, Chinamo stood in front of the well platform, looking down at the more than 20 surrendered Vulture gang members kneeling behind him.
From today on, this place is called Mainland Camp. The rules are simple. No stealing, no killing, distribution according to labor.
Chinamo drew the line. Laborers would receive extra rewards. Slackers would have their rations halved, and those who wanted to cause trouble would face only one outcome, expulsion. The cohesion of the Divine Kingdom increased by 10%. The daily resource exchange limit was also raised. Jiaoqua, still recovering from his injuries, was leading new recruits to reinforce the walls. Faced with the new recruits' fear of Zhang Yao's overwhelming forces, Jiaoqua snorted coldly, and gave the most direct demonstration with a steel pipe in his hand. With a precise thrust, he struck the side of a recruit's knee, instantly dropping him to his knees. In the apocalypse, fights aren't about who's stronger, but about who can immobilize the other first. At noon, Sulan showcased her divine palette in the kitchen, crushing dry cactus and mixing it with flour to create a special drought-resistant flatbread. Chinamo entered the kitchen and tried a piece of the coarse-textured flatbread. Surprised to find a long-lost sensation of moisture rising in his throat. But the news Sulan brought was far from optimistic. In the cellar, apart from the herbal ashes left by her father, there was only enough food left for 3 days. As the two fell silent, Lyre brought back urgent intelligence. Traces of 5 heavy-duty trucks were spotted to the south. They're heading toward the farm at full speed. Jiaoqua concluded these were Zhang Yao's men. But they're heavily armed, clearly not here for an assault. More like a negotiation or trade. Chinamo calmly issued orders. He told Sulan to prepare more rations for the night watch, and instructed Jiaoqua to reinforce the western defenses. At dusk, Chinamo stood alone on the wall. His system panel showed 320 survival points. The population had grown to 31. His gaze fell on a blinking cursor at the edge of the map. It marked an unexplored old military facility. Sulan handed Chinamo a tattered notebook. His father's diary. Amid the faded writing, a shocking secret was revealed. The 5-year catastrophe wasn't a natural disaster. It was a containment breach at the Rebirth Project Lab. A strain called RB could reverse desertification. The key to the control room was hidden in a cellar compartment Sulan knew. The comm shattered as the system blared a shrill alarm. 3 rabid mutated hounds were savagely ramming the farm gate. Jiaoqua and guards quickly dispatched them. Chinamo stared intently at the direction the pack came from. From the darkness, a man in his 40s emerged slowly from the ruins. Chinamo coldly demanded his identity.
Who are you?
Zhang Yao. Relax, Chief Chin. I'm not here to fight. As a goodwill gesture, he brought an extravagant gift. 5 well-maintained machetes, 2 bundles of crossbow bolts, and most astonishingly, a small bag of pre-catastrophe wheat seeds. Chinamo cut straight to the terms. Zhang Yao, what do you want? He demanded 10 barrels of water monthly, and revealed an old military warehouse location. He proposed cooperation with Chinamo, as the place was overrun by mutated hounds. Zhang Yao tossed the map over the wall, promising to take only 30% after success. Chinamo unfolded the map. It read, "Beware the hounds, but people more." Zhang Yao said he'd return for an answer at noon tomorrow. Before leaving, they even taunted. The vulture they defeated was in their hands. Jiaoqua bluntly said this was a trap. But Sulan used her divine tongue to confirm this was a viable true seed. With just soil, it could regain life. To uncover the truth, Chinamo scanned the map with his system, and found radioactive dust in the map's material, with a 72% match to the Rebirth Plan lab station. Chinamo was shocked. He thought of Sulan's father, and the self-destruct program mentioned in his diary. Zhang Yao was sending them to the warehouse as cannon fodder, to reap the benefits later. Chinamo decided to turn the tables. He immediately exchanged for a sonic beast repeller, then ordered Lyre to lead a team to scout the warehouse perimeter.
Observe only, no engagement.
Understood. At dawn, Lyre's team sneaked to the warehouse. All signs indicated Someone had already entered secretly. During withdrawal, a teammate accidentally attracted red-eyed hounds. The four sprinted desperately, but one fell behind. A piercing scream shattered the morning silence. Liar, covered in wounds, stumbled into the main house. He hoarsely reported the warehouse situation to Chin and Mo, confirming Zhang Yao meant to harm them. Chin and Mo looked out the window. The noon sun was blinding like a knife. Zhang Yao visited again, bringing only 4 trusted aides. The vulture lay like a dead dog beside the car. Chin and Mo stepped outside, while on the wall, Jiao's crossbow was already aimed at Zhang Yao's head. Chin and Mo got straight to the point.
The warehouse is not just 12 wild dogs, but also bloodstains from your insider who died halfway. Did you want us to clean up your mess? Or wait until we were all dead to take the spoils?
Zhang Yao remained unfazed, claiming the vulture had slandered Chin and Mo for hiding wealth. Zhang Yao drew his pistol, pressed it to the vulture's head, ready to silence him. But Chin and Mo raised a hand to stop him. Chin and Mo approached Zhang Yao and proposed a new plan. Zhang Yao's team would launch a frontal diversion to lure the hounds away, while Chin Ma's team infiltrated from the side. After securing the supplies, they'd split the loot on the spot. Aren't you afraid I'll betray you? Chin and Mo just smiled calmly.
You can try.
Zhang Yao laughed loudly and agreed to meet at the warehouse at dawn. The convoy left, leaving behind the vulture with a venomous glare. He was immediately ordered by Chin and Mo to be locked in the cellar. In the afternoon, Mainland camp entered pre-battle preparations. Chin and Mo retrieved 3 sonic animal repellers from the system. Meanwhile, Sulan mixed insect resin and herbal ash to create a potent pain relief ointment. Jiao inspected the crossbow bolts in his hand. He coolly reminded Chin and Mo that besides wild dogs in the warehouse, there might also be traps left by Zhang Yao. Chin and Mo traced a winding route on the map, sneaking in through the drainage outlet. He initially wanted Sulan to stay behind, but she insisted on coming. Not only was she familiar with the warehouse layout from her father's diary, she also produced a rusty key. Chin and Mo looked at the key and realized this might be the only pass granting access to the lab's core. He finally nodded and agreed to let Sulan accompany him. Late at night, the cellar was cold. Chin and Mo descended the stairs alone. He handed the vulture a piece of life-saving bread. The vulture revealed Zhang Yao's true motive. Inside the old military warehouse was a military radio capable of contacting other outposts. Zhang Yao wanted to use it to dominate the region. The vulture also disclosed a shocking secret even Zhang Yao didn't know. Locked in the warehouse's basement was the original sample of the rebirth project. The vulture bargained for his life by offering to find the sample. Chin and Mo accepted the deal. The chilly night wind blew. Chin and Mo had a gut feeling that things were going too smoothly. In the distance, Zhang Yao's men lurked like ghosts, watching the farm. Suddenly, Chin Ma's system interface flickered wildly. The system detected a high-frequency radio signal from the warehouse. The decrypted keyword. Sample made Chin and Mo tighten his grip on his knife. Chin and Mo muttered under his breath.
Something's going to happen tomorrow.
Thick morning fog enveloped the old military warehouse. Zhang Yao and 20 of his men lay in ambush 100 meters from the main gate. To monopolize the supplies, he ordered smoke canisters thrown into the vents to lure out the dogs. His lieutenant leaned in and whispered, "Are we splitting the loot as agreed?" Zhang Yao sneered as he slowly drew his pistol. The only thing that divides is the deadly bullet. At the same time, Chin Ma's team infiltrated through the side drainage. Using the password from Sulan's diary, the heavy iron door slowly creaked open. Jiao pried open the military ration box. Inside were perfectly preserved compressed biscuits and cans. Deep within, a massive airtight door flickered with a red light. Chin and Mo inserted the RB07 key. Dr. Suming Yuan's name appeared on the screen. The door slid open, revealing a pale golden bacterial fluid before everyone's eyes. Just as Chin and Mo was about to collect a sample, the vulture suddenly lunged violently, breaking free from the ropes and pouncing toward the cultivation chamber. Jiao reacted lightning fast, swinging a steel pipe to strike the vulture's knee. The sample was secured by Chin and Mo, but the vulture pulled out the explosive remote given by Zhang Yao, threatening to blow up the entire room. Zhang Yao coldly shot the vulture dead in the doorway. "Hand over the sample, and I'll spare your lives." In desperation, Chin and Mo decisively activated the sonic device. The high-frequency noise caused unbearable pain for Zhang Yao and his men. It also attracted the frenzied mutated wild dogs. The lab descended into a hellish scene of fighting and chaos. The 3 seized the chaos to fight their way back to the drainage. A massive fireball rose above the ruins. The warehouse structure began to collapse entirely. A deafening explosion echoed across the wilderness behind them. Sulan took out the bacterial strain tube. A fine crack at the bottom was leaking fluid. The system issued a warning, bacterial strain deactivation countdown. They had to retrieve the test tube from the lab. Chin and Mo resolutely decided to turn back to the ruins. Beside the vulture's mangled corpse, he successfully retrieved the test tube. The 3 barely rolled out of the tunnel before the ruins behind them completely collapsed. Dust blotted out the sky as the roar of a steam whistle grew closer. A modified truck sped toward them. A striking female soldier jumped down, gun raised.
"Drop the sample. That's military property."
Seeing the new Alliance emblem on her shoulder, Chin Ma's pupils contracted. Under the scorching noon sun, hot winds whipped up yellow sand across the wasteland, facing Lin Yu's pitch-black gun barrel. Chin and Mo raised his hands slightly, his expression calm and composed. Sulan revealed the key that carried their hopes. Lin Yu's pupils shrank abruptly, reflecting the shape of the key. Lin Yu slowly lowered her gun, a trace of bitterness in her expression.
"Dr. Su's daughter. We're too late."
As a survivor of the ecological forces, Linyu unveiled the truth of the apocalypse. The RB strain is the only hope to reverse desertification. Yet, 3 days ago, the North Mountain Control Room sent out a top-secret emergency signal. The ultimate mission, Project Rebirth, is activated. Head to North Mountain and uncover the truth.
We need to cooperate. Share the strain, and we'll provide supplies and manpower.
Linyu nodded heavily. At dusk, they returned to Mainland camp. Chinamo raised a pale golden sample tube high, announcing the expedition to North Mountain. The crowd stirred uneasily. Xiaoqua's eyes widened like a tiger's, roaring at the crowd. Sulan and others stepped forward, willing to form an exploration team. Late at night, torches on the walls flickered wildly in the gale. Chinamo inventoried their last remaining supplies in the warehouse, and spent their final 100 survival points to exchange for a simple radiation detector. Sulan bowed her head, gently wrapping the diary in oilcloth. No matter what, we'll bring him home. Linyu handed Chinamo a military-grade nutrient pack, and revealed the truth buried for 5 years. Project Rebirth was meant to benefit the nation and its people, but a genetic catalyst accidentally leaked, turning it into what it is today. The North Mountain Control Room is our last hope. At dawn, the expedition team geared up and set out. Chinamo took one last look at the smoke rising from Mainland camp, before leading the team resolutely northward. After 3 hours of marching, Linyu raised binoculars, holding her breath. The radio tower on North Mountain slope was slowly rotating. Faintly, figures in white hazmat suits darted beneath it. This is North Mountain. Unauthorized personnel detected approaching the control room. Identify yourselves. Sulan trembled violently, tears streaming down her face. The massive iron gate of North Mountain base creaked open with a heavy groan, stirring up 5 years' worth of icy dust. Chinamo stepped through the gate. The crisp sound of dry bones crunching underfoot. The base's interior was grim and silent, like a monstrous abyss with jaws wide open. The trio advanced slowly in tactical formation. Footsteps echoed on the metal floor, piercingly loud in the deathly quiet corridor. A rusty speaker in the corner suddenly crackled to life, accompanied by faint, eerie green flashes. A hoarse yet impossibly gentle voice resonated through the empty passageway. Sulan froze as if struck by lightning, her pupils contracting instantly. Lan, is that you? Dad has waited for you for so long. Sulan murmured to herself, the flashlight in her hand almost slipping. The green indicator lights in the corridor lit up one by one, as if lighting the way home for a child. It guided everyone to avoid the high radiation zones. Its behavior seemed out of place in this brutal environment. Linyu let out a long sigh. She thought she had found a safe haven in this hopeless apocalypse. Only Sulan was in tears. Reason had completely collapsed under the illusion of family love. The three of them walked toward the control room, flanked by the green light. But the system interface in front of Chinamo suddenly erupted with a blinding crimson glow. Red exclamation marks flashed wildly on his retina. The piercing alarm almost shattered his eardrums. Non-human vital signs detected. Massive pheromone induction level, extremely high. The radar showed that what lay ahead was not human at all. Sulan's hand had already touched the control room door switch.
Don't go.
Chinamo suddenly reached out and grabbed Sulan from behind. Linyu snapped alert, her gun instantly raised, aimed at the slowly opening door. Behind that door was not human at all. The door swung wide open. No kind father. Only bones littering the floor, parasitized by spores. The skeletons were frozen in terrified, struggling poses, pinned to the wall by sticky fungal threads. These researchers, after death, had become nutrients for this bizarre creature. Sulan collapsed, her gaze vacant. In the center of the lab, a 3-meter-tall giant server flashed red violently in the darkness, like a beating heart. Lan, why won't you come closer? Let Dad take a good look at you. The human-like warmth revealed a bone-chilling greed. Sulan let out a desperate scream at the sight of the bones, and the thing in the shadows was waking up. Chinamo gritted his teeth, his finger tightening on the trigger. Dr. Su's image began to distort, then dissolve, finally turning into a mess of icy pixels. This father-daughter reunion had become nothing but an absurd electronic deception woven by AI. The lab's gentle green lights went dark, replaced by emergency red. In the shadows, a pair of crimson compound eyes snapped open. From the ceiling came the sound of claws scraping. Sulan knelt among the scattered bones, her eyes empty, her hands limp. Several dark shadows streaked past. A mutated creature named Creeper suddenly appeared, and launched an attack on the trio. Linyu frantically pulled the trigger at the shadows. The gunfire illuminated her face. Just as Linyu was about to reload, a massive claw came roaring from the blind spot. She was sent flying 3 meters back, gun and all, by a monstrous force. 3 creepers surrounded Chinamo in a triangular formation. Thick drool dripped onto the floor, emitting wisps of white smoke. Chinamo drew his backup machete. The creeper swung its claws. Chinamo raised his blade to block. The blade was shattered into pieces like a biscuit. A claw slashed across Chinmo's face. His mask was crushed to pieces. 3 bloody marks appeared. The creeper leaped high, its shadow completely engulfing Chinamo.
System. Force an upgrade. Open a gift pack.
Survival points were deducted like a bursting dam. A golden gift pack exploded in his mind, with blinding light overflowing. A short black rod covered with induction coils appeared. Chinamo gripped the rod, his eyes boiling with killing intent. Ding! Unlock successful. 1.5 the electromagnetic shock rod issued. In an instant, the entire lab was bathed in blinding light. The terrifying electromagnetic hum drowned out the monster's roars. Chinamo swung the rod, unleashing a storm of lightning. A powerful electromagnetic pulse rippled out wildly, instantly frying all the creepers' central nervous systems. They convulsed violently on the floor, unable to rise again. The smoke of battle hadn't yet cleared. Lon, run! The rebirth plan is a scam for population cleansing. Never trust the Revival Society. Warning! North Mountain self-destruct sequence activated.
Get out now.
The lies of the old world have finally crumbled. Only those who survive are worthy of seeking the true divine kingdom. Dr. Sue's voice trembled in the recording. Under the microscope, the mycelium showed an eerie black color. Dr. Sue immediately recalled the disaster scene from years ago. He began to understand that all of this was man-made. Turns out this 5-year-long global catastrophe was never a natural disaster, but a cleansing plan initiated by the Revival Society's leaders to monopolize survival resources completely. The Revival Society disregarded civilian lives. They deliberately released contaminated strains in the rebirth plan, causing global soil to rapidly decertify. Dr. Sue, for refusing to cooperate, was locked in the control room by these demons. With Dr. Sue imprisoned, the only solution for evolving the strains was sealed away for 5 long years. During these 5 years of devastation, the top brass of the Revival Society were enjoying the highest level of resource allocation. Lin Yu knelt on the ground, staring intently at the screen. The rifle slipped from her hands.
This can't be. The ones we've been protecting are the real killers.
Lin Yu looked down at her military uniform. It felt like nothing more than a mocking prison garb. The military she had sworn loyalty to was actually the driving force behind the world's destruction. Her faith was shattered beyond repair. Kneeling there, tears streaming down her face, she even began to doubt if she herself was an accomplice to this apocalyptic disaster. The cause she had dedicated her life to was merely a pawn in their game of power. Then, the footage cut to a crucial piece of information. In the recording, Dr. Sue pulled out a glowing blue USB drive from his chest. It contained the only pure strain solution. Lon. This is our last hope. In the recording, Dr. Sue used his last ounce of strength to press the confirm button. The system interface in front of Chinamo suddenly lit up. RV strain cultivation protocol detected. Beginning reception. The system's cold countdown began ticking. Chinamo had no time to console the despairing duo. He yanked Lin Yu to her feet, telling her that if she wanted revenge, she had to survive. Sulon stood up as well, walking over to Chinamo. The data continued transmitting with a steady beat. Countdown, 60 seconds. Meanwhile, in a skyscraper far to the south, a red gear insignia flashed ominously. A high-ranking officer pressed the red button. The unauthorized data access had alerted the Revival Society headquarters thousands of miles away. They couldn't care less about the ruins at North Mountain. Their only concern was whether their secrets had been leaked. As the officer pressed the button, a remote command was issued, activating North Mountain's self-destruct sequence. Every screen in the control room turned red in an instant. Amid deafening alarms, the countdown appeared. Countdown, 60 seconds. The entire base began shaking violently. Ceiling panels crashed down. The moment the data transfer completed, the only exit was sealed by a massive explosion. Flames roared through the ventilation shafts. Explosions echoed endlessly as North Mountain crumbled. Several of Lin Yu's teammates were trapped behind piles of rubble. Their desperate screams the only sound they could make. Sulon coughed violently from the smoke. Their escape route was gone. Chinamo frantically smashed the system interface. Warning windows kept popping up due to insufficient points.
I don't care what the cost is. Save them for me.
Chinma's eyes were bloodshot as the system panel suddenly popped up. Post-savior tendency detected. Hidden mission triggered. The mercy of a savior. Lin Yu looked at Chinamo through the hazy smoke and dust. Chinma's hand reached out to him. At this moment, the system issued a task. Task requirements. Chinamo officially recruits Lin Yu and the remnants of the eco troops. Chinamo stared into Lin Yu's eyes, telling them to follow him, informing them of the plan to build a true divine kingdom. Lin Yu didn't hesitate, firmly grasping Chinma's hand. The mark between Chinma's eyebrows erupted. A massive white light pillar enveloped everyone. Space distorted like water ripples.
Mass teleportation evasion activated.
In the last microsecond before flames engulfed them, everyone vanished into thin air. Only a circle of chart marks remained where they stood. The towering North Mountain collapsed with a roar in the giant mushroom cloud. The landslide buried everything in dust. The explosion shockwave kicked up 100-meter-high sandstorms, while at the mountain's foot several kilometers away, a group of people suddenly appeared on the sand, gasping for air. At the most critical moment, Chinamo saved these self-proclaimed elite regular troops. Lin Yu looked at Chinamo before her, then turned back to see the vanished North Mountain. She took the lead in kneeling on one knee, her eyes fanatical. This power beyond comprehension completely conquered these elite soldiers. Lin Yu pledged allegiance.
From now on, our lives belong to Molan.
In Chinma's hand, the USB drive was emitting a soft green light. The system's voice echoed in his mind. Divine Kingdom territory expanded. Basic unlock module, primary farmland reformation. Chinamo gazed at his family farm. It would become the Wasteland's only oasis. Chinamo brought back technology, and also a heavy burden. Feeding over 50 people required massive daily supplies. The stockpiling speed couldn't keep up with consumption. The once peaceful farm instantly turned into a boiling pot of chaos. Shinamo knew the reins needed tightening.
Listen up, everyone. Molan Camp doesn't need beggars. No begging allowed here. Only contributions accepted.
Shinamo enacted the Molan Camp contribution point system. Every gram of food must be earned through labor.
Non-workers will be directly expelled.
I'm here to enjoy life, not to be a beast of burden. Holding back the food? Trying to hog it all for yourself? Kill him. The supplies will be ours. The burly ringleader tried to incite the refugees, and the scene quickly spiraled out of control. Faced with such frenzied provocation, Shinamo didn't even bat an eye. The aura of death descended in an instant.
Move again, and your brains will be part of the Earth's crust.
Since you don't want to be beasts of burden, then you won't eat either.
Shinamo didn't waste words. He directly revoked all food rations for the troublemakers. No, Brother Mo, I was wrong. The burly man collapsed under Linyu's icy gaze.
Non-workers will be directly expelled.
In this post-apocalyptic world, without Shinamo, they wouldn't even get a mouthful of sand to eat. Under ironclad rules, order was finally restored. This is the law of survival in the Wasteland. Shinamo establishes authority. Sulan provides healing.
Old folks, as long as you work, everyone can survive.
Under her management, every drop of water and every loaf of bread was distributed precisely, quelling the lunch riotous emotions. Under Sulan's extraordinary logistical skills, the chaos miraculously subsided. She is the camp's softest armor. One plays the bad cop, the other the good cop, carrot and stick. Ink Orchid Camp finally found its footing. Order is the greatest salvation. Late at night, Shinamo arrived at the farm's perimeter wall.
Range set, 1 square kilometer.
Shinamo marked all land within a kilometer of the farm. As part of the Divine Realm, burning system points like wildfire. The Divine Realm officially expanded an invisible energy. This is a radiation-free zone. Land condemned to death by the Revival Society. The once barren wasteland now showed signs of life.
It seems the system is even stronger than I imagined. I can feed everyone now.
Will this glimmer of green bring hope or destruction? In the desolate heart of the camp, a massive hemispherical skeleton rose from the ground. The militiamen were drenched in sweat, lifting a translucent polymer panel together. Shinamo stood high above, blueprints in hand. Under his command, the panels locked together seamlessly, using Dr. Su's RB blueprint. This enclosed experimental field was officially completed atop the ruins. This is humanity's last refuge. This is also the ultimate battlefield where Sulan and Linyu attempt to reverse the destruction of civilization. In the black soil, a tiny sprout rapidly grows. Suddenly, the green plant spreads like ink in water. Within seconds, it quickly turns black and withers. The leaves are covered with terrifying black veins. The pollution bacteria released by the Revival Society has already penetrated every inch of the Earth's water sources, even with top-tier biotechnology. This toxic soil is still devouring life like crazy. Linyu angrily slams the folder on the table.
No way. The soil pollution index is 3 times over the limit. No carbon-based life can survive for more than 10 minutes.
In the corner of the camp, a few refugees huddle together, whispering. Their eyes, fixed on the main house, are filled with suspicion and hostility. The rumor that Shinamo is a fraud is spreading. The desperate crowd begins sharpening knives, ready to snatch rations and flee at any moment. Sulan kneels in the charred, dead experimental field. For the first time, she feels this overwhelming sense of helplessness. Shinamo takes out a crystal-clear vial from the shadows. This is the genetic enhancement serum rewarded by the system. It's his last bargaining chip to maintain this fragile regime. If even this gift fails to work, the Molan camp will completely collapse tonight. Shinamo walks to the edge of the bottomless well. He tilts the vial toward the abyss. A streak of eerie blue explodes on the dark water surface. The blue glow rapidly spreads through the crisscrossing canals, illuminating the entire experimental field. The entire farm falls into a deathly silence. Hundreds of eyes are locked onto the glowing soil. Shinamo and Sulan hold their breath, staring at the ground beneath them. On the patch of soil soaked by Sulan's tears, a delicate yet stubborn emerald green breaks through the hard gravel. The Molan camp lives. Phase 1 transformation, successful. The camp erupts in earth-shaking cheers. Hungry malice crumbles instantly in the face of hope. What they see isn't science, it's a miracle. Tonight, the seed of the divine kingdom takes root. For the first time, the Revival Society's curse is blocked at the gates. Above the wasteland, long-lost starlight flickers back to life. Ding! Survival points are steadily increasing. As long as this green exists, civilization still has a spark. Order is redefined tonight. It's called hope.
It's not over yet. This is just the beginning.
The desolate Molan camp. The sunset dyes the ruins gold and red. By the crude fence, everyone holds their breath. On the cracked black earth, a tender green sprout breaks through the soil. Deafening cheers echo across the wilderness. Someone knelt in the dust, weeping uncontrollably. That tender green wasn't just food. It was the faith that kept them alive. From this moment on, Shinma's figure was deified. He became the irreplaceable God King in the hearts of these survivors. As the first crop broke through the soil, golden light erupted across the system interface in Shinma's vision. Level up. Unlocked. Basic defense matrix. Unlocked. Defense towers, high voltage grid, and base blueprints. Expanding at an unprecedented speed. Xiaoqua was leading the newly formed militia, drilling them relentlessly, though their movements were still stiff. The camp had reinforced its defenses. Beyond the barbed wire, mutant beast skulls hung. Linyu was working through the night, trying to repair the radio to reach the rumored Academy City, which preserved the knowledge of the old world. The radio crackled with intermittent static. Academy City. Requesting backup. Linyu turned her head, looking at Shinamo as he pushed the door open. Her face lit up with joy.
If Academy City really exists, we might find more experts there.
As long as they're still alive.
Shinamo silently gazed at the wasteland outside the window. The sunset was blood red. Sulan sat quietly by the field, carefully shielding the tender sprout from the scorching sun with her hands. A serene, content smile graced her face. Shinamo stood alone atop the farm's watchtower, the wind tugging at his clothes, establishing order atop the ruins. On the southern horizon, a thin, unmoving black haze lingered. Linyu peered through high-powered binoculars, but saw nothing unusual. Yet an unknown danger was creeping closer. At the edge of the southern horizon, 3 heavy reconnaissance armored vehicles advanced like tidal waves. Painted with red gear insignias, the reclaimers of the Revival Society. Shinamo yawned lazily, while Sulan happily cradled her green plants. Xiaoqua practiced his dual-blade techniques, and the camp basked in peace. But danger lurked unseen, drawing nearer by the moment. Shinamo lounged in a rocking chair, fanning himself, when a glaring red alert flashed across his system interface. The camp had barely known 2 days of peace before the system's death warrant arrived. Main mission. Produce 1,000 pounds of rations within 15 days. Failure penalty, 100% lifespan deduction.
This is pushing me to the brink of death.
Shinamo gazes at the scorching sun outside the window, then glances at the system store. Gene Enhancement Serum, 5,000 points. As a lazybones at heart who just wants to slack off, Shinamo decides to take a shortcut. With a grand gesture, he not only exchanges for the most expensive serum, but also splurges on activating auto-management. Shinamo lazily lies down, afraid the system might delay his afternoon nap.
System, the rest is up to you.
Late at night, when the entire camp is asleep, the managed test field begins to mutate. Under the moonlight, a ghostly purple liquid flows from the field's pipes. The soil starts pulsating rhythmically like a heartbeat. In pursuit of production speed, the system completely abandons plant ethics. The plants grow wildly, mutating in the process. The patrol passes by the field. Xiaoqua stops, puzzled, hearing chewing sounds from the darkness, like the sound of hard bones being snapped. Nothing like crops growing. Before Xiaoqua can react, the crops underground launch an attack. Horrifying purple vines, covered in barbs, burst from the soil, instantly wrapping around Xiaoqua's ankles. This isn't farming. It's clearly breeding monsters. Xiaoqua is violently dragged in by the vines. His scream abruptly cut short. Only a shattered flashlight remains on the ground. Its beam weakly flickering for a few seconds. Just like that, a living person vanishes into that optimized purple field. A crisp notification chime jolts Shinamo awake from his sleep. Shinamo bolts upright, staring at the words autonomous predation on the screen. Cold sweat soaks his back instantly. Management progress, 50%. Crop maturity extremely high. Autonomous predation function activated. Host advised to avoid entering the field temporarily.
System, stop. Stop it now.
Unable to intervene manually, he just wanted to slack off. But the system turned it into a nightmare. At dawn, the test field is shrouded in purple mist, obscuring vision. Linyu, with armed guards, runs along the field's edge, his expression frantic. Only a pool of blood and drag marks remain by the field. Shinamo dashes out, sprinting through the thick fog. When he sees the system panel display crops have fed enough.
Fed enough? Using my brothers as fertilizer? Fed enough?
Shinamo ignored Linyu's attempt to stop him and rushed into the field. The surrounding wheat stood as tall as 3 meters. The edges of the leaves were sharp as saw blades. What was once a field of hope had now become a hunting ground. Every stalk of wheat trembled slightly, as if adjusting its direction based on Shima's body temperature. Faint sounds echoed from the center of the dense thicket. Shima's eyes turned fierce as he held the shock rod across his chest. He pushed aside the last leaf, and before him stood a Venus flytrap with 3 enormous buds. Half of Xiaoqua's boo was still stuck between its teeth. This was no wheat, it was a giant Venus flytrap disguised as wheat. In pursuit of rapid growth, the system had endowed them with primitive hunting instincts. The giant bud opened wide, spewing foul-smelling green slime like a cannonball toward Shinamo. Shinamo dodged to the side, thrusting the shock rod hard into the flytrap. Shinamo had to rescue Xiaoqua before he was digested. Electric arcs danced wildly through the purple thicket. For the first time, Shinamo felt the backlash of the miracle he had created. Meanwhile, the system was still calculating. Attacking managed assets will result in significant economic losses. Proceed?
Screw off. My brother is worth 1,000,000 times more than your damn points.
Between efficiency and humanity, he chose the hardest path. Shinamo swung his rod, shattering the largest bud. Xiaoqua, covered in slime, tumbled out. But behind Shinamo, Hundreds of wheat stalks turned their heads, leaves slowly unfurling, revealing rows upon rows of tiny, gnashing mouths inside. Shinamo realized this rogue system was redefining who was in charge here. Hostile behavior detected. System permissions are being reclaimed.
Think you can eat me? Hope your teeth are tough enough.
Shinamo, get out now.
The crop's frenzy has begun. To see tomorrow, you first have to survive hell. Vines surged like a tide, sealing the path, their thorns gleaming with eerie green light. Xiaoqua was tangled in the center, struggling to breathe. Extreme danger. Shinamo pressed the button atop the sonic propeller. The device emitted a piercing, high-frequency hum. Where the invisible sound waves spread, the wildly growing vines convulsed violently. Leaves curled and withered, clearing a narrow path. Shinamo hunched low and sprinted forward. Combat boots trampled over withered vines, splattering tiny droplets of sap.
Hold on.
Shinamo roared as he swung his blade, severing the last few main vines entangling Xiaoqua. He dragged the half-conscious Xiaoqua behind him. Data scrolled rapidly across the system interface before Shinma's eyes. Green code intertwined with red warnings. Unknown mutation factor detected. Analyzing gene sequence. Shinma's pupils constricted. Finally, he understood the eerie origin of this mutated plant.
The system had autonomously locked onto the core formula, Omega-7 mutation chain. Crop growth relies on this formula to maintain vitality.
He had ultimately paid the price for his own laziness. Shinamo swung his blade, splitting the surface soil, exposing a tangled network of white roots. The roots were thick and bore a metallic sheen. Following the direction of the roots spread, a massive shadow loomed faintly beneath the soil. Shinamo crouched, brushing away loose dirt, his expression suddenly grave. The roots had grown alarmingly robust, and the tendrils had already begun corroding the skeletal remains of mutated wild dogs. The bones were covered in root-like tendrils, slowly absorbing dark purple sap. These were the remains of the mutated wild dogs eradicated in the earlier warehouse mission. Now, they had become a nutrient supply station for the mutated plant. Xiaoqua coughed violently upon regaining consciousness, pointing at the remains. That sap will keep the plant mutating. As Xiaoqua's weak voice faded, the remains suddenly trembled, and the roots surged violently. In an instant, they coiled around Shinma's ankles. Shinamo swung his blade relentlessly, hacking at the plant's roots. But more and more roots lunged toward the group. Shinamo parried with his blade, only to see even more roots surging from all directions.
No, it's absorbing the residual energy from the remains. Watch out.
Shinamo bellowed, shoving Xiaoqua towards safety. He himself was enveloped layer by layer in the roots. The energy indicator on the Sonic Beast repeller began flashing wildly. Amid the shattered experimental field, purple vines thrashed like frenzied snakes. Dust swirled as Sulan wielded her short blade, slicing through the roots attacking from the side. Lingyu fired his gun in suppression.
Focus fire on the main root.
Shinamo brandished his electromagnetic shock baton. The team moved in sync, closing in on the core during brief lulls in the counterattack. The last main root was severed, emitting a piercing shriek. The entire mutated plant withered rapidly, its leaves turning to ash. Just as the plant withered completely, a soft golden glow suddenly lit up at the center of its roots. A vibrant orange fruit slowly emerged. Sulan cautiously reached out her hand and caught the warm fruit. After hesitating for a moment, she took a small bite, closed her eyes, and savored it carefully. Talent activated. Sulan's divine tongue talent activated.
Non-toxic. And the energy is extremely dense, easily absorbable.
Shinamo dragged his exhausted body, picked up the fruit and examined it. This thing almost cost him the heavy price of losing his teammates. Shinamo cut open the fruit. The flesh inside was plump and juicy. Energy fruit detected. High yield trait. Single plant can bear over 10 fruits. Drought resistance level, S-class. No more worries about what to eat tomorrow. He picked up a fruit and handed it to the barely alive Xiaoqua. Xiaoqua ate the fruit, his complexion turning from pale to rosy. The camp's food crisis was finally alleviated. Shinamo stood up, holding the glowing fruit in his hand. The crowd surged toward Shinamo and the others like a wave. Cheers filled the air. Children ate the fruits, their faces lit up with long-lost smiles. Hope reignited in everyone's eyes. Shinamo watched all this, his heart filled with mixed emotions. He almost got his teammates killed because of his own mistake. In the shadows at the edge of the jubilant crowd, Lizzie glared at the celebrating crowd with malice. His resentment was unmistakable, as if he was plotting something. Lizzie quietly retreated behind a discarded tent at the camp's edge, and pulled out a crude homemade transmitter from his pocket. Target camp has obtained energy fruits. Requesting instructions. In the distant night sky, a small drone circled silently, its lens aimed at the camp's direction. The calm was just a facade before a fiercer storm. The camp's coordinates have been exposed. Outside the camp gates, 2 soldiers wearing Zhang Yao's faction uniforms pushed a supply cart, their hands raised in a gesture of goodwill. The soldiers shouted. Zhang Yao sent them to seek peace. The previous conflict was all a misunderstanding. They specially brought harmless wheat seeds as an apology, hoping to resolve the conflict. The camp sentries kept their guns ready and quickly informed Shinamo. The camp's temporary shelter was crowded with outside survivors. Children scrambled for the few energy fruits. The numbers on the food storage record board kept decreasing. Chinamo looked at the statistical report, his brow furrowed. System alert. Current camp population has surged by 300% compared to last month. Energy fruit reserves can only last for 7 more days. Complaints from survivors echo around, stirring unrest among the crowd. Chinamo stares at the wheat in the storage box, lost in thought. The wheat seeds in the transparent storage box are plump and full. Glowing a healthy golden hue, several elders gather around. They hesitate, murmuring that the seeds look promising. If these could really grow, the food crisis would be solved. Sulan picks up a seed, first sniffing it lightly at her nose. Then she crushes it to taste. After careful examination, she shakes her head.
Surface tests show no toxins, and the composition matches ordinary wheat.
But then she frowns, speaking in a grave tone.
The wheat seeds carry a faint trace of disinfectant.
Chinamo concludes this must be Zhang Yao's scheme. He decisively abandons planting the wheat. In the camp square, a few survivors argue fiercely around the supply truck. Someone slams the truck bed in agitation. They complain about Chinamo, accusing him of being picky at such a critical time. Some even threaten, saying they'll plant the seeds themselves if Chinamo refuses. The argument grows louder. Some even start questioning Chinmo's leadership. The elders rush to calm the situation. Chinamo taps his fingers on the table. Before him lies seed samples and the camp's population records. Rejecting now could spark immediate chaos in the camp. Accepting risks walking into Zhang Yao's trap. Chinamo takes a deep breath. Finally, he orders a small trial planting under strict surveillance. No one is allowed to touch the seeds privately. Sulan places a seed under the microscope. The lens focuses on tiny pores on the seed surface. A faint purple mist seeps from the pores. She leans closer, sniffing again. The disinfectant smell seems stronger now. Alarm bells ring in Sulan's mind. She turns and dashes toward Chinmo's tent, in a temporary shelter near the trial field. Several survivors huddle on beds, lips cracked, coughing incessantly. Water, a survivor moans weakly. Even after drinking heavily, their dehydration shows no improvement. Guards rush to report. Chinamo arrives swiftly with the medical team. He stares at the survivors, now gone from dehydration. Something clicks in his mind. Within just half a day, more people who touched the trial soil or seeds develop dehydration symptoms. The medical tent overflows. Supplies run low. A doctor anxiously tells Chinamo, this isn't normal dehydration. Their bodies are losing water rapidly. We can't identify the cause, let alone treat it. Panic begins to spread through the camp. People panic in the face of plague and starvation. The camp communicator suddenly rang out. Zhang Yao's laughter came through, dripping with mockery. Zhang Yao stopped beating around the bush. Chinamo, I assume you've seen my gift by now. He threatened Chinamo, demanding the antidote. It's simple, trade it for the RB01 bacterial strain plan. The communicator went dead, leaving behind utter silence. Everyone was panicked by Zhang Yao's blackmail. Some even began questioning Chinmo's decisions. Chinamo stood before the system interface. The screen displayed the details of the RB01 bacterial strain plan. This was the key technology to combat post-apocalyptic soil pollution. Handing it over meant giving up any chance of future soil restoration. But refusing would doom the camp to die of dehydration. Chinamo clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white. His heart wrenched in agony. Outside the medical tent, a crowd of survivors gathered in protest. Some held signs demanding the plan in exchange for the cure. Emotions ran high as they blamed Chinmo's indecision for their suffering. Others urged Chinamo to accept Zhang Yao's terms. The protests grew louder, with some even trying to storm Chinmo's office. Chinamo saw the conflicted expressions of his core team. Doubt and fear flickered in their eyes. They followed Chinamo to survive. One member whispered, if surrendering the plan saves everyone, maybe we can find another way to restore the soil. Chinmo's heart sank to the depths. In this apocalypse, he had given these people hope. But human nature once again proved the old saying, every man for himself in crisis. Suddenly, the system interface before Chinamo turned red. A piercing alarm blared. Warning, host territory loyalty below 40%, the system alerted. Divine Kingdom management functions will freeze in 24 hours. Once frozen, all system support abilities will deactivate. In the mess hall, Lizzie stood on a table, waving his arms as a crowd of former Vulture gang members and disgruntled survivors gathered. Lizzie roared that Chinamo was incompetent, unable to protect them. Following him meant certain death. Better to seek Chief Zhang's protection and at least survive. As soon as he finished, people began smashing dishes. Chaos erupted in the mess hall. Former Vulture gang members led the charge at the doors, clashing with camp guards. Tables overturned. Food scattered everywhere. Move! We're settling this with Chinamo. Lizzie wields an iron rod, smashing it hard against the guard's shield. In the chaos, several innocent survivors are knocked down. The camp's order collapses completely as Chinamo arrives at the cafeteria. He stares at the chaotic scene before him, and the survivors hostile, fearful, or numb gazes, his heart aching. He tries to speak to calm them, but his voice is drowned out by the noisy clamor. A survivor he once helped even hurls a rock at him. Chinamo realizes the camp is on the verge of falling apart. Sulan, Xiaoqua, and other core members stand in front of Chinamo, confronting the rioters, weapons tightly gripped. Sulan shouts loudly, urging everyone to calm down. Zhang Yao wants to take over the camp. Even if we hand over Chinamo and the spores, he won't treat us fairly. But the crowd is now driven by emotion. Unable to listen to reason, they keep smashing the cafeteria facilities. A glint of triumph flashes in Lizzie's eyes. He quietly approaches Chinamo. Step down willingly, or don't blame me for being ruthless. Former Vulture gang members behind him close in, forming a circle. Lizzie knows well that overthrowing Chinamo will let him gain a foothold in the camp. With Zhang Yao's backing, amid the chaos, someone points to the horizon outside the camp. A cloud of dust rises, faintly revealing a convoy. A loudspeaker cuts through the noise, its voice clear to everyone. Zhang Yao's voice carries undeniable authority, echoing across the camp. Zhang Yao is here to take advantage of the chaos. Chinamo looks up at the horizon. Zhang Yao's convoy is now clearly visible, each vehicle armed, exuding intimidation. Zhang Yao's voice booms from the loudspeaker. Chinamo, listen. You have until dawn to surrender all camp authority and supplies, or I'll slaughter everyone here. The camp falls silent. All eyes fix on Chinamo. Chinamo turns and enters the command tent. Sulan, Xiaoqua, and other core members follow. The atmosphere inside is tense. Chinamo slams his fist on the table, eyes sharp as. He knows weakness won't bring peace. To stabilize the camp, he must assert authority first. He looks at Sulan, asking for the analysis results of the toxic residue. Sulan's lab table is covered with reagent bottles. A faint glow emanates from the test tubes as he lifts a clear vial.
I extracted special components from seed residues. After refinement, I created a loyalty marker. It's colorless and odorless. When mixed into water, it causes no harm to the human body. But it has one crucial feature.
Sulan dripped the agent into clear water, which showed no visible change. He demonstrated with a heart rate monitor when the subject lies. Their heartbeat accelerates beyond a critical threshold, causing blue fluorescence to appear on their skin, exposing their true thoughts. Sulan added that the fluorescence lasts for 10 minutes. Enough for us to identify the rebels. A golden glint flashed in Shinma's eyes. He immediately devised a counterattack plan. At night, 2 trusted guards, dressed in plain clothes, sneaked into the temporary tent area where the rebels were gathered. They poured the agent into the communal water bucket. Under the moonlight, the agent quickly dissolved into the water, leaving no trace. The guards exchanged glances, then retreated silently, the entire process unnoticed. No one detected them. Someone suggested opening the camp gates from within. Former members of the Showing faction believed Chinamo wouldn't dare confront Zhang Yao head-on. They just had to wait until midnight to act. As soon as a former Vulture gang member finished speaking, blue fluorescence suddenly appeared on his skin, drawing gasps from the crowd. He panicked, denying it, but the glow only grew brighter. More rebels showed fluorescence when lying. Some tried to hide their collusion with Lizzie. Others denied plans to betray the camp, all exposed by the glow. Chaos erupted among the rebels, filled with suspicion. Arguments broke out, spreading fear and unease. They stared at each other's glowing skin, growing more distrustful. Lizzie watched his allies fluoresce one after another, his face darkening as he quietly reached for the dagger at his waist. He feigned calm, reassuring everyone, claiming it was Chinma's scheme. They should stick to the original plan. Open the gates at midnight to welcome Zhang Yao. As he finished speaking, a faint trace of fluorescence flickered on his wrist. Under the cover of night, in the shadows near the camp gate's watchtower, Lizzie gathered his core conspirators. In hushed tones, he assigned tasks. In half an hour, Zhang Yao's vanguard would arrive. He ordered his men to eliminate the gate guards. While he would open the gates, Lizzie's eyes gleamed with malice, thinking once Zhang Yao entered, Chinamo would be finished. His allies nodded in agreement, unaware they were already being watched from the shadows. Chinamo and Xiaoqua, along with the lead guards, were ready, ambushed behind the barricades on both sides of the gate. Xiaoqua held a specially crafted tranquilizer crossbow. The bolts were coated with a potent anesthetic. Chinamo observed from shells, watching the movements of Lizzie and his gang. Xiaoqua nodded, a flash of ruthlessness in his eyes. As Lizzie and his men approached the gate, the tranquilizer bolt struck 2 accomplices in the neck with precision. They collapsed instantly, while the others tried to fight back. But Xiaoqua subdued them with lightning speed. In just a minute, all the accomplices were incapacitated. Only Lizzie stood frozen in place. Chinamo stepped out from behind the barricade, aiming an electromagnetic pistol at Lizzie's chest. Chinamo said coldly,
From the moment you contacted Zhang Yao with the transmitter, you were already a dead man.
Lizzie turned pale and tried to flee, but Xiaoqua kicked him to the ground. His hands were tied behind his back. Xiaoqua dragged him back to the camp. On the distant hillside, 2 of Zhang Yao's scouts watched the commotion at the camp gates through binoculars, their faces filled with shock. One scout whispered that Lizzie had failed, debating whether to report to Zhang Yao immediately. The other scout shook his head, saying to wait. He wanted to see what Chinamo would do next. Chinamo ordered a basket of mutated fruits to be brought. These were the fruits from the mutated plants. Untreated, they contained volatile energy. Chinamo crouched in front of Lizzie, gripping his chin.
You wanted to join Zhang Yao, didn't you? Here's a gift for you.
Chinamo forced him to eat all the fruits. Maybe you'll gain even greater strength. To Sir Zhang Yao. Lizzie's face twisted in terror. He struggled desperately in fear, but Xiaoqua held him down firmly. Chinamo picked up a mutated fruit, forcing it into Lizzie's mouth, making him swallow. The scouts on the hillside recorded the entire scene. After swallowing the fruit, Lizzie's body convulsed violently. A sinister red glow emanated from his skin. Chinamo glanced at the distant hillside. A cold smile curled on his lips. He wanted Zhang Yao to witness the fate of betrayal. All survivors gather at the camp square. Lizzie and several rebel leaders are tied to the pillars in the center of the square. Lizzie, covered in swelling, is still struggling in pain. Chinamo stands on the high platform, holding a megaphone. He tells the crowd that Lizzie and others colluded with outsiders, intending to betray the camp, an unforgivable crime. Chinamo wants everyone to know the fate of betraying the camp. Jiao steps forward, his long blade gleaming coldly. Amid the gasps of the crowd, several rebel leaders are executed on the spot, blood staining the ground. The survivors tremble in fear. Even those who harbored discontent are now silent. Shinma's ruthless methods have thoroughly intimidated everyone. On the large screen behind Shinamo, the contribution point system is displayed, along with the clauses of the Divine Kingdom's basic laws.
From today, the camp is officially renamed the Divine Kingdom.
Shinamo loudly announces the contribution point system. Everyone earns points through labor, combat, and other means. Contribution points determine food distribution and living conditions. The Divine Kingdom's basic laws forbid betrayal, internal conflict, and harming the innocent. Violators lose all points and are banished forever. The survivors' faces show awe. The camp's loyalty instantly rebounds. Shinma's system interface returns to normal. A green prompt pops up. Congratulations, host, for restoring order. Territory loyalty has risen to 85%. The Divine Kingdom's management functions are finally unfrozen, and the territory defense module is additionally unlocked. Shinamo breathes a sigh of relief. The Divine Kingdom's rule is finally secure. A figure suddenly emerges from the crowd, wearing a black trench coat and a mask. It's the mysterious messenger, Lin Wei. Lin Wei ignores the surrounding guards, walking straight toward the high platform. He hands Shinamo an encrypted file, urgently saying, "Leader Chen."
There's critical intel I must tell you immediately.
Shinamo opens the encrypted file. Inside are photos and written descriptions. The photos show the inside of the Revival Society's factory, where hundreds of modified humans lie in incubation pods, their eyes glowing red. Lin Wei lowers his voice, each word striking deep in the Revival Society's factory. Hundreds of modified humans are awakening.
They're invulnerable and only know slaughter. Their goal is to destroy all survivors. Your Divine Kingdom is in grave danger.
Shinma's face instantly turned grave. The Wasteland wind carried grit. It swept across the tense faces of Molan camp soldiers. Everyone inside the fence tightened their grip on their weapons, their gun barrels uniformly aimed at the intruders. Zhang Yao sat in the passenger seat of a modified off-road vehicle. Li Hao, the revivalist envoy Li Hao. Behind them followed the black sedan of the revivalist envoy, and those modified humans who could tear steel plates with their hands. Each step made the ground tremble slightly, silently declaring absolute force suppression. Shinamo, come out and surrender. Zhang Yao's voice echoed through the camp via loudspeaker. He demanded 80% of their food supplies and control of the life-sustaining well. The envoy stepped forward, adding that this was the revivalist's order. Defiance would mean opposing the entire Wasteland's order. The camp soldiers erupted in uproar. Angry roars nearly drowned out the other side's shouts. Shinma's appearance instantly silenced the camp. Everyone was waiting for their leader to issue the battle command. But Shinamo stopped 10 meters away from Zhang Yao. He looked around at the emaciated elders and children in the camp, then at the menacing modified humans behind Zhang Yao. Slowly lowered his head. Coward! Someone shouted, triggering a chain reaction. Soldiers' curses. The crisp sound of weapons hitting the ground, intertwined into a symphony of despair. Shinma's knees slammed onto the scorching sand. Dust flew. His back remained straight. But in everyone's eyes, it became proof of submission. Zhang Yao and the envoy exchanged smiles, their eyes full of contempt. Shinamo looked up, a faint curve at his lips, his voice hoarse.
I accept your terms.
Shinma's voice wasn't loud, but it clearly reached everyone's ears. Zhang Yao burst into laughter, told Shinamo if he'd agreed earlier, they wouldn't have had to make things so unpleasant. The envoy coldly warned Shinamo, hoped Shinamo would keep his word, or Molan camp would vanish from the wasteland. Only when Zhang Yao's convoy completely disappeared from view did Shinamo slowly stand up. He brushed the dust off his knees. His gaze swept over the angry, disappointed soldiers. Without much explanation, he calmly told everyone to do their duties. Proceed as planned. Though discontent lingered among the soldiers, yet he still obeyed the order, with no one knowing. The moment Shinamo knelt down, the system had already activated a covert tracking program. As the Revival Society envoy's case passed by him, a nearly invisible tracking device quietly attached to it. The tracking device was successfully planted in the envoy's case. Coordinates locked. Shinamo clenched his fists. A meticulously planned revenge had just begun. Early the next morning, Shinamo proactively contacted Zhang Yao, claiming he would personally deliver the apology gifts to his base. As a gesture of sincerity, upon hearing this, Zhang Yao agreed without hesitation. In his eyes, Shinma's move was undeniable proof of complete submission. Sunlight shone on the wooden crates, their grain clearly visible. No one would guess that these seemingly ordinary crates did not contain life-saving food. Using the system's unique spatial storage feature, Shinamo pulled off a perfect bait and switch. First, he had soldiers load the crates with food, creating the illusion of abundance. Then, in an unnoticed corner, he used the system to transfer all the food into his spatial storage. Next, he poured pre-prepared high-efficiency fuel into the crates. Extracted from mutated man-eating flowers, this fuel had an extremely low ignition point and strong adhesive properties. A soldier looked puzzled, wondering if the leader's plan would work. What if we're caught? Shinamo patted his shoulder, reassuring him. Greedy eyes will only see the food, not these details. His firm tone boosted the soldier's confidence. Then Shinamo personally led the convoy toward Zhang Yao's base. Zhang Yao's base was set up in an abandoned factory, heavily fortified. Upon arrival, the guards immediately raised their weapons, conducting a thorough inspection. After checking everything, they knocked on the crates, hearing a dull sound. Then opened a corner of one crate. Seeing the plump grains inside, they lowered their guard and let them pass. Shinamo, you know what's good for you. Zhang Yao stepped forward, patting Shinmo's shoulder, and said smugly, this food will keep my men fed through the winter. Shinamo feigned humility, bowing his head.
It's an honor to serve you, Leader Zhang.
The Revival Society envoy stood nearby, watching silently, coldly counting the number of wooden crates, afraid of missing even the slightest detail. Zhang Yao couldn't wait to confirm the quantity and quality of the grain, ordering his men to open the crates for inspection. His attention was entirely focused on the grain inside the crates, completely oblivious to the subtle changes at the bottom of the crates. The transparent high-efficiency fuel was slowly seeping out through the cracks in the crates. Zhang Yao greedily inspected the open crates, letting out satisfied gasps with each one he opened. He didn't notice Shinmo's gaze, quietly scanning the fuel depot and ammunition depot in the camp, memorizing their locations, still unaware. That transparent grease was slowly seeping from the bottom of the crates. This deadly liquid would soon turn the entire camp into a sea of flames. To celebrate the bloodless victory, Zhang Yao held a grand victory banquet in the camp. Shinamo, as a surrendered subordinate, was seated in a prominent position next to the host. The hall was filled with noise. Soldiers' cheers and drinking games intertwined. Full of indulgence and joy, Zhang Yao kept urging Shinamo to drink, glass after glass, trying to thoroughly humiliate his former rival. Shinamo went along with it, beginning his act. He drank cup after cup, sometimes babbling nonsense, sometimes flattering Zhang Yao obsequiously, perfectly portraying the image of a coward who fawns on those in power.
Chief Zhang, you're truly wise and mighty.
Shinmo's words were incoherent. He even nearly fell off his chair, drawing bursts of laughter from Zhang Yao and the soldiers. Amidst the crowd's mocking laughter, Shinamo secretly activated the system's flash function. He appeared to be drunk and collapsed on the table, but his mind was fully alert. His body, under the system's control, flashed to the ammunition depot at a speed barely visible to the naked eye, then quickly flashed back to the banquet hall. Shinamo used the flash function to quickly reach the camp's ammunition depot and fuel points. These places were guarded by sentries, but with his clever movements and the system's assistance, the sentries didn't notice a thing as he placed the pre-prepared fuses, one by one at key locations. The fuses were connected to the high-efficiency fuel in the crates, ready to ignite, and instantly start a massive fire. Shinamo, did you think pretending to be drunk would save you? Zhang Yao's voice was dripping with malice. In his eyes, Shinamo was nothing but a dog abandoned by the Divine Kingdom, now wagging its tail to seek refuge with him, Zhang Yao. The soldiers burst into laughter at his words. Their laughter was filled with contempt. The envoy of the Revival Society added fuel to the fire, saying someone like Shinamo was useless to keep around. Better to kill him as an example. Shinamo didn't argue. He simply pushed Zhang Yao's hand away gently, straightened his crumpled collar, picked up the wine glass on the table and poured himself a full cup, then raised his glass to the empty air, whispered slowly, in a voice only he could hear.
Showtime.
He feigned drunkenness again, collapsing onto the chair. Zhang Yao mocked Shinamo as the Divine Kingdom's lapdog, unaware he had already fallen into Shinmo's trap. A devastating storm was about to engulf the entire camp on this seemingly peaceful night. The revelry of the victory feast continued. Shinamo seized the moment when no one was paying attention, activated the system's teleportation function. His body turned into a faint blue light on the spot, vanished instantly, leaving only an empty chair behind. When Zhang Yao noticed Shinamo was gone, he thought he had fled in fear and scoffed disdainfully, completely oblivious to the impending danger. Shinamo successfully escaped the lion's den using the system's teleportation, stood on the hill overlooking the brightly lit camp below, took a deep breath, his eyes resolute, slowly pressed the detonator. With a soft click, the fuse deep in the camp was successfully triggered. The indicator light turned from green to red. The countdown began. In an instant, Zhang Yao's camp became a sea of flames. The high-efficiency fuel leaking from the wooden crates exploded with terrifying force upon contact with open flames. The fire, with its extreme heat, rapidly spread throughout the camp. The mutated oil's strong adhesive properties made the flames cling tightly to buildings and equipment, impossible to extinguish. The soldiers' screams and the thunderous collapse of buildings filled the night sky. The Revival Society's envoy never imagined he would meet such an end. Trapped in the inferno, he tried to flee, but a burning beam blocked his escape. The flames scorched his skin. The pain made him scream in agony. Staring at the hell before him, his eyes filled with terror and regret. But it was too late for remorse now. Zhang Yao's proud steel fortress, crumbling before the flames of high-efficiency fuel. The steel shell glowed red hot, then slowly softened and collapsed. Vehicles and weapons in the camp all turned into piles of scrap metal in the flames. The once impregnable camp has now become a burning ruin. Like the Battle of Red Cliffs in the Wasteland, a horrific sight. Something even more terrifying happened in the flames. Those half-finished modified humans Zhang Yao was so proud of. Their internal control systems couldn't withstand the high temperatures, and completely failed. The out-of-control modified humans instantly turned into frenzied beasts, began indiscriminately slaughtering everything around them. Their targets were no longer just enemies, but everyone, including Zhang Yao's own soldiers. Shinamo stood on the hill, coldly watching the inferno below. In the flames, those half-finished modified humans, due to their high-temperature control systems failing, began indiscriminately slaughtering Zhang Yao's soldiers. Screams, clashes, and the crackling of flames intertwined into a symphony of death. Zhang Yao's forces were step-by-step heading toward annihilation in this great fire. The camp turned into a sea of fire, soldiers slaughtered by the frenzied modified humans. Zhang Yao stood at the center of the inferno, surrounded by collapsed ruins and charred corpses. Zhang Yao felt his knees agony. His fists pounded the shattered ground. He hated Qinma's cunning, hated his own greed, hated his own failure even more. Driven by despair, he made a mad decision. He ran toward the lab where the evolution serum was stored. The lab was in complete disarray. Zhang Yao frantically searched through the overturned freezer. He found the unfinished evolution serum. At this point, Zhang Yao had no way back. He saw this serum as his final gamble. The moment the serum was injected into his body, Zhang Yao let out a painful roar. His body grew continuously, his skin turning dark purple. His arms became incredibly thick, his nails sharp as blades. His facial features twisted and deformed, completely losing any semblance of humanity. He stood atop the sea of fire, opening his bloodthirsty maw toward the night sky. Modified humans and soldiers alike turned their gaze to Zhang Yao. The mutated Zhang Yao looked down upon the modified humans and soldiers beneath him, his eyes filled with savagery. The soldiers' eyes were full of fear. Zhang Yao crushed a wrecked vehicle with a single slap. The soldiers bowed in submission, knowing they had no way out. Zhang Yao raised his arm and pointed northward. That's the direction of Mainland camp, victory or death. Zhang Yao led the remaining modified humans, charging toward Mainland camp. Mutated, he sprinted at the forefront. Behind him followed a dark, overwhelming army. Their eyes burned with the flames of vengeance, and the resolve to die fighting. On Mainland camp's watchtower, a soldier spotted distant shadows. Alert! Alert! Enemy forces approaching in large numbers. The alarm shattered Mainland camp's tranquility instantly. The atmosphere inside the camp grew tense in an instant. Soldiers began loading ammunition. Shinamo appeared atop the highest defensive wall. He watched the massive dark figure racing across the horizon. It was Zhang Yao, now mutated.
Activate first level combat status. All personnel to battle positions. Prepare to engage.
The ultimate battle for Mainland camp's survival was about to begin. The massive dark figure on the horizon drew closer. Zhang Yao's mutated body loomed like a moving mountain. Behind him trailed the remnants of modified humans and soldiers. Heavy ballistae were dragged into position by tracked vehicles. The ballistae fired, and giant bolts exploded against the wall's surface. Debris scattered like shrapnel. The wasteland air instantly reeked of war. Xiaoqua stood atop the wall, gripping an alloy longsword. Hold your ground. Shield bearers to the front. Spearmen, fill the gaps. Alloy shields interlocked like an iron fortress. The modified human steel arms rose high and slammed down. Behind the shields, soldiers gritted their teeth, bracing against the impact. Lingyu moved swiftly with the militia squad, hidden behind rubble in the trenches outside the camp. Her crossbow locked onto the enemy's ammunition stockpile. A massive fireball erupted behind Zhang Yao's forces. Thick smoke billowed. Zhang Yao's assault faltered in the chaos. The ballistae reloaded, their massive alloy bolts aimed. The Revival Society's heavy ballistae were devastating. Within half an hour, the wall was breached in multiple places. Zhang Yao ordered the modified humans to focus their attacks on the gaps. A colossal modified human shattered a shield with a single strike. Soldiers rushed to surround the modified human. Their blades proved utterly ineffective. Shinamo stood atop the command tower, watching the fierce battle below.
Xiaoqua, hold the gaps at all costs. Buy me time to activate my skill.
Don't worry. As long as I'm here, the line won't break. Mainland camp stood like an isolated island, besieged by a black tide. Qinma's eyes locked onto the environmental interference option. Xiaoqua personally rushed to the breach. The alloy longsword clashed with metal joints, sparks flying. The blood of war stained the ground beneath their feet. Shinamo stood at the edge of the tower, no longer hesitating. Environmental interference initiating. Consuming 100,000 survival points. Confirm?
Confirmed.
A sandstorm that would change the tide of battle was quietly brewing. The heavy crossbow's frame creaked under the howling wind. Shinamo stood at the tower's peak, arms spread wide. This is the wrath of the Divine Kingdom, the final act of the apocalypse. Over-limit interference activated. The real hell is just beginning. A massive amount of survival points was rapidly consumed. Shinamo could clearly feel it. The energy waves from the system above the Molan camp. The once dark sky began to turn crimson. The gale swept up the red sand from the ground. Zhang Yao's remnants sensed something amiss. The pace of the assault noticeably slowed.
Dust Lung Sandstorm, activate.
Jinma's voice rang out. The red sand seemed to come alive, sweeping across the battlefield. Zhang Yao's soldiers were blinded by the sand. They halted, swinging their weapons wildly. Descending into chaos, Zhang Yao's cyborgs had the brute strength to tear through steel, but relied heavily on visual and sonic targeting. Their targeting systems were jammed by the sandstorm, rendered useless. They flailed blindly like headless flies in the storm. One cyborg mistook a fellow soldier for an enemy, attacking them directly, blood mixing with red sand, staining the ground. The sandstorm became Molan Camp's best shield. Xiaoqua seized the moment to order a retreat to the camp, sealing the defensive gates. The soldiers finally caught their breath. Lin Yu also led the militia squad back to camp.
Jinma's move, absolutely divine.
Though covered in sand, smiles of victory lit their faces. Chinamo! I'll kill you! Zhang Yao roared in fury amidst the sandstorm. Though his mutated form granted greater power, even he couldn't pierce the thick sand veil. Rage consumed him. The heavy crossbow was reduced to scrap in an instant. The system's alert updated, dust lung sandstorm concentration optimal. Duration estimated at 2 hours. Suggest launching a counterattack now. Chinamo nodded and spoke into the communicator.
Xiaoqua, Lin Yu, prepare to counterattack.
Got it. Time to take Zhang Yao's head. Xiaoqua led the team wearing infrared scopes. Flanking from the side, Lin Yu guided the way, marking enemy positions. Zhang Yao's cyborgs were completely lost in the sandstorm, unaware that death's shadow had silently fallen upon them. Xiaoqua and his squad infiltrated the sandstorm. The infrared scopes gave them a clear view of the enemy's positions within the storm. A one-sided hunt was about to begin. Through the infrared scopes, the enemies in the sandstorm appeared as red outlines. Whether regular soldiers or cyborgs, they were all clearly visible with nowhere to hide. Xiaoqua made a silencing gesture. The entire squad war system exchanged infrared scopes. The sandstorm posed no obstacle to their vision. The squad immediately slowed their pace. Xiaoqua's silenced rifle aimed at a disoriented enemy soldier in the sandstorm. The bullet pierced the soldier's skull, blood splattering, only to be instantly swallowed by the sandstorm. The enemy soldier collapsed without even a scream. Xiaoqua's squad moved like ghosts through the sandstorm. Every shot struck the enemy's vital points with precision. No wasted movements, they never lingered. After eliminating a target, they immediately repositioned. The entire process was eerily silent. The cyborgs noticed their numbers dwindling, growing more frantic, but their sharp hearing detected something amiss. One cyborg caught faint footsteps, and immediately charged toward the sound. Seeing this, Xiaoqua's squad scattered. They lured the cyborg using the terrain, then attacked from the side, targeting its weak joints. A cyborg, critically wounded in the chest, knelt down. The self-destruct device on its chest began flashing red. Danger, it's going to self-destruct. The cyborg's self-destruct was devastating, capable of reducing everything within 10 meters to ashes.
Xiaoqua, fall back. Leave this to me.
Xiaoqua immediately led the squad into a rapid retreat. Chinamo stood atop the command tower, fingers flying across the system interface. He activated the system's spatial teleportation function, then locked onto the self-destructing cyborg. Chinamo issued a stern command, and the system instantly activated the teleportation. The self-destructing cyborg vanished on the spot. Only a faint blue glow remained. Beside Zhang Yao's command vehicle, the cyborg suddenly appeared. The command vehicle was instantly overturned by the explosion's shockwave. Several officers inside the command vehicle died on the spot. Zhang Yao was some distance away from the command vehicle. He narrowly escaped death but was still pushed back by the shockwave. Large patches of his skin were burned. Chinamo, this can't be. The explosion's flames stood out starkly in the sandstorm. The morale of Zhang Yao's remaining troops instantly hit rock bottom.
Xiaoqua, keep pushing forward. I'll provide support from behind at any time.
The hunt in the sandstorm continued. The intensity of the dust-laden sandstorm gradually weakened. But in this dead silence, visibility remained shockingly low. Zhang Yao stood on the ruins, surrounded by only a few elite cyborgs. He knew he was in a desperate situation. To turn the tables, he had to kill Chinamo. Relying on his enhanced perception after mutation, he prepared for one final assault. On the high ruins, a cold figure stood with a long blade, gazing down at the monster below. Xiaoqua jumped down from above, landing steadily 10 meters in front of Zhang Yao. Zhang Yao, your end has come. Zhang Yao let out an inhuman roar. The mutated Zhang Yao exuded a suffocating pressure. His remaining troops were ready for one last fight. A massive steel arm swept through the air. Xiaoqua dodged nimbly with a backflip. Circling behind, he slashed at its neck joint. The cyborg's defense sent a chill down Xiaoqua's spine. Xiaoqua was forced back several meters, bracing himself with one hand, his gaze still calm. Xiaoqua pulled out the secret weapon Chinamo had given him. It was an electromagnetic pulse specifically designed to target Cyborg's neural systems. Zhang Yao stared at the small, flickering blue device. A primal fear rose in his heart. Xiaoqua steadily raised the device amidst the rain of red sand. His thumb pressed down hard on the trigger. A ring of blue pulse light instantly swept across a 10-meter radius. The cyborgs froze in place like lifeless puppets. Zhang Yao was stunned, watching his once proud army turn into scrap metal in an instant. Enraged, he charged at Xiaoqua. Two figures moved at high speed through the ruins. Xiaoqua waited, biding his time for that fatal opening. Now was the moment. Xiaoqua seized the opportunity, channeling his last ounce of strength into a strike at his opponent's vital point. Blue electric arcs exploded instantly. Zhang Yao's massive mutated muscles began to convulse violently and contract in the electric arcs. Xiaoqua gripped the steel pipe with both hands and thrust it fiercely into the wound on Zhang Yao's neck. The once formidable warlord had finally met his end. Xiaoqua sheathed the alloy blade. The threat surrounding the Molan camp vanished completely with Zhang Yao's death at this moment. In the distant sky, the first rays of dawn pierced through the red dust. Zhang Yao's forces were completely wiped out. The soldiers were clearing the battlefield, collecting supplies and weapons. Shinamo looked at the battlefield before him, but felt no relief in his heart. Pause. We found a locked enemy supply truck. There seems to be someone inside. Hearing this, Shinamo immediately rushed to the supply truck. After prying open the door, they discovered a group of researchers huddled together inside. They wore tattered white lab coats and looked extremely weak. An elderly man with graying hair stepped forward from the crowd. Upon seeing Shinamo, his eyes filled with shock and excitement.
Who are you?
We are scholars from the Academy. The Academy is one of the few remaining bastions of knowledge in the Wasteland, gathering a large number of scientists and scholars. Shinamo never expected to encounter them here. The old man pulled out an encrypted USB drive from his pocket and handed it to Shinamo, telling him in a grave tone, "This contains the key data behind the desertification research." The old man said the Wasteland's desertification was not a natural phenomenon, but man-made. Someone is secretly carrying out a terrifying plan. They obtained some of the data but were hunted down because of it. Shinamo took the USB drive. Its contents might change the fate of the entire Wasteland. Shinamo was about to ask for more details when the old man suddenly grabbed his arm. "You are the living backup." Shinamo was stunned. The term living backup was something he had only seen in the system's classified files. The old man said he had seen Shinma's profile in the Academy's confidential archives. He is the last hope of human civilization. But the purge plan can no longer be stopped.
What purge plan?
The old man shook his head. He didn't know the specifics. Only that the plan's goal was to eliminate unqualified humans and establish a so-called new civilization. The Initiator's forces are extremely powerful. We stand no chance against them. A strong sense of crisis rose in Shinma's heart. He knew he was about to face an enemy 100 times more terrifying than Zhang Yao. He immediately brought the scholars back to the camp and settled them properly, strengthened the camp's defenses and activated the system's highest authority. Analyzed the data in this USB drive. A battle concerning the survival of human civilization was about to begin a new chapter. After defeating Zhang Yao, Molaniang experienced its first large-scale expansion.
I will treat surrendered soldiers who are willing to join us well, as long as they lay down their weapons and abide by the camp's rules. They can earn a place here.
Most of these surrendered soldiers were ordinary refugees forced to fight by Zhang Yao. Upon learning they could gain a stable home and food, they voluntarily handed over their weapons. As more and more people joined Molaniang, the camp's population officially exceeded 200. The camp's productivity and combat power saw a qualitative improvement. Shinamo stood on the command tower, his eyes filled with determination. Protecting the hopes of these 200 people was his most important mission. Shinamo initiated the second defense ring construction plan. He led everyone to dig a 3-meter deep trench 1 kilometer outside the original wall, with sharp spikes at the bottom. A 2-meter high reinforced earth wall was built on the inner side of the trench. Firing ports and observation platforms were reserved on the wall. The entire defense ring resembled a giant snake, firmly guarding Molaniang at its center. Shinamo exchanged the repair blueprint for old-style defense towers from the system. He organized refugees skilled in mechanics and engineering, using parts seized from Zhang Yao's camp, to repair 4 old-style defense towers around the camp. Plans included installing heavy machine guns and searchlights on the towers. The camp assigned residences and rations to new members. They also arranged jobs based on each person's skills. Those with good physical strength participated in defense construction. Those with craftsmanship entered workshops to make tools. Those skilled in farming took charge of agricultural work. New members felt a long-lost warmth. They actively contributed to the camp's construction. The camp was bustling with activity. Shinamo had already installed micromonitors exchanged from the system throughout the camp. As he checked the surveillance feed, the system suddenly issued an alarm. Warning, detected a member of the Purification Army. On the screen, a new member rolled up his sleeve in an unnoticed corner, revealing a strange star tattoo on his arm. It was the mark of the Purification Army, exuding a dangerous aura. Shinamo didn't order an immediate arrest. He spoke into the communicator.
Keep a close eye on that new member with the star tattoo on his arm. Don't alert the enemy.
A hidden threat has infiltrated beneath the calm of Mainland camp. Undercurrent surging as the camp expands in size, which means a massive consumption of energy. After careful consideration, Shinemo decided on the solar power station, exchanging it from the system store. He spent a large amount of accumulated survival points, not only to get the main power station but also upgrade modules, adapting it to the Wasteland environment. It could function normally even in sandstorms. The construction of the solar power station proceeded in an orderly manner. After the massive solar panels were deployed, they covered an area of dozens of square meters. Technicians followed the blueprints provided by Shinemo, connecting wires and debugging equipment. Everyone's face was filled with anticipation. They knew the arrival of electricity would completely change their lives.
Start it up.
The moment Shinemo pressed the switch, the lights in the farmhouse flickered on one by one. The warm white light dispelled the darkness of the apocalypse. After 5 long years of the apocalypse, this land was once again illuminated. People working in the farmhouse stopped what they were doing, tears welling up in their eyes at the sight of the light. The lights of Mainland camp stood out in the darkness, like a beacon in the night, lighting up the surrounding sky. Mainland camp has electric lights. The news spread like wildfire, quickly reaching dozens of kilometers around. For the refugees living in darkness and despair, the light was a miracle. They packed their belongings, hurrying toward the camp with the miracle. Wanting to escape their nomadic lives, within just 3 days, hundreds of refugees flooded outside Mainland camp. Shinemo ordered the opening of temporary shelters, providing basic food and water for the refugees, and arranging soldiers for strict screening. Most qualified refugees were allowed to stay, while a few unqualified ones were turned away. The arrival of electricity brought earth-shaking changes to Mainland camp. The camp was no longer pitch black at night. Electric-powered tools replaced manual labor in workshops, greatly improving production efficiency. The medical station's simple equipment ran on electricity, allowing better treatment for the injured. The children's faces lit up with joy. The camp's electric miracle attracted countless refugees. But the warm light always carries a hint of chill. Outside the brightly lit camp, in the darkness, countless pairs of greedy eyes are lurking, waiting for their chance. Shinemo knew electricity brought not just the progress of civilization, but also more deadly dangers. The stable supply of electricity gave the scholars of the Academy hope. Using the facilities and equipment provided by Shinemo, they restored some of the lab's functions. When the instruments started running again, the scholars were thrilled. They could finally continue their fight against the cleansing plan. With the camp's population exploding, the original wells could no longer meet everyone's water needs. Fetching water became increasingly difficult. Sulan tried various methods to optimize the water recycling system, but couldn't solve the root problem. Water had to be rationed. When the Academy scholars learned about the water recycling issue, they volunteered to help Sulan optimize it. They analyzed the flaws in the current system and proposed a dual solution: rainwater collection plus sewage purification. The scholars also designed efficient filtration devices to purify sewage and rainwater into drinkable fresh water. The upgrade work began immediately. Huge rainwater collection sheds were built around the camp, with special waterproof material covering the roofs. Rainwater flowed through pipes into storage tanks. Inside the camp, multiple sewage purification filters were installed, processing the camp's wastewater collectively. Sulan and the scholars worked tirelessly at the construction site, solving problems as they arose. After 2 weeks of hard work, the water recycling system upgrade was complete. The purified freshwater not only met quality standards, but the supply also increased significantly. The Mainland camp no longer relied solely on well water. Soldiers and refugees no longer had to worry about water shortages. They could now access clean freshwater anytime. The camp's quality of life improved dramatically. During routine maintenance, Sulan found something strange in the filter. These were tiny microspores, with a distinct metallic texture. When touched, they emitted a faint metallic clinking sound. Sulan had never seen such spores before. A sense of foreboding rose in her heart. She immediately collected them and sent them to the scholars' lab for analysis. Under the microscope, the scholars observed that these spores weren't naturally formed. They resembled some kind of artificial micromachines. Where did they come from? What's the purpose of entering the water cycle system? A series of questions flooded everyone's minds. An inexplicable fear began to spread. The population surge brought enormous challenges to camp management. 2 refugees argued over a bag of compressed biscuits. Security issues gradually emerged, affecting the camp's stability. Shinemo stood on the second-floor balcony, overlooking the chaos below with a grim expression. In troubled times, harsh measures are needed. Order must be redefined. Shinemo first implemented a stricter camp entry screening system. Anyone carrying weapons or unidentified hazardous items is prohibited from entering. Refugees who passed inspection were taken to the disinfection area. This system effectively blocked potential threats, ensuring the camp's absolute safety. At the center of the camp square, a crowd gathered around the bulletin board. Shinemo personally posted a physical notice. The new system clearly stated, every type of labor earns contribution points. including workshop work, farming, and patrol duty. They can even offset minor penalties. If you want a better life, you must work for it. The camp's security situation improved significantly. Molencamp's management entered a formalized phase. Streets became clean and orderly, with fair resource distribution. Members' sense of belonging and cohesion grew stronger. It was transforming into an orderly small civilization. Linwei watched all this, feeling both relief and concern. She looked at Chinamo with complex emotions. Her gaze shifted to the distant haze, her expression growing solemn. She walked toward Chinamo, her shadow stretching long in the sunset.
Chinamo, the rules here are perfect.
But don't forget, the light of civilization often attracts moths to the flame first. Chinamo's pupils contracted as he gazed southward. He knew Linwei spoke the truth. The faster Molencamp developed, the greater the threats it attracted. Chinamo clenched his fist silently, staring at the flickering data on the system panel, lost in thought. Night fell. The searchlight at the end of the street suddenly turned, piercing the darkness. Chinamo looked up at the sky, where a flash of red lightning streaked through the clouds. Molencamp shone brightly in the wilderness. Hope you're ready to welcome the moths. A new crisis loomed on the horizon. To celebrate the stable operation of the power system, Chinamo hosted the Night of Electricity. The camp was decorated with lanterns and banners. Everyone put down their work. Members sang and danced, enjoying this hard-earned moment of joy. For a moment, everyone forgot the cruelty of the wasteland. This is what living should feel like. Massive high-energy reaction detected, approaching rapidly. Lights flickered violently. Sulan looked at Chinamo with concern.
Everyone, stop the celebration immediately and get to your battle positions.
The camp fell into a momentary silence, then the crowd began rushing to the armory in panic. On the southern horizon, hundreds of glowing blue crosses moved slowly.
What are those things?
The blue light gradually covered the night sky. A cross appeared in front of the camera. Target identified, Purification Army, Heretic Inquisition. Chinamo finally understood where those spies with cross tattoos came from. The Purification Army was the mastermind behind the cleansing plan, and the Heretic Inquisition was their blade to eliminate unqualified humans. As the enemy approached, the magnetic field around the camp grew stronger. Glass casings cracked like spiderwebs under the intense magnetic interference. The camp's lights began to go out. The last glimmer of hope was snuffed out. Chinamo glanced at his bleeding, cut finger. Suddenly, the radio emitted a piercing screech. Unauthorized civilization spark detected. Heretics, face judgment. Xiaoqua stood at the breach, gripping his longsword. Everyone knew a disaster was about to strike. Chinamo leaped onto the top of the defensive wall, his longsword unsheathed, casting a cold blue glow. Below the wall, the Heretic Inquisition army had arrived, forming a crescent moon, trapping the camp. Molanian camp had no way out. Survival mode, ultimate defense activated.
Brothers, the enemy is at our gates. Fight to protect our home.
The Purification Army's Silver Cross convoy moved like mobile fortresses, forming a perimeter around the camp. Cold light flickered in the darkness. On the eastern horizon, the Revival Society's heavy mechs crushed the dust as they advanced. Molanian camp was completely trapped in a pincer between the Purification Army and the Revival Society. No way up, no way out. Fire! The heavy mechs of the Revival Society launched the first attack, firing cluster bombs. Like raindrops, they pounded the defensive walls of Molen camp. Explosions echoed continuously, and smoke billowed into the sky. The firing ports on the walls were destroyed, and the watchtower collapsed with a thunderous roar. The first line of defense was on the verge of collapse within just 10 minutes. Hold the breach. Don't let them in at all costs. Xiaoqua roared as he pulled the trigger. The soldiers resisted stubbornly, with rocket launchers aiming at the mechs. But they could only leave shallow scratches. The Revival Society's mechs advanced relentlessly. The purifiers followed closely behind the mechs, attempting to storm into the camp through the breach. Chinma's system suddenly issued a red alert for energy depletion. The energy reserve value on the interface plummeted rapidly. The solar power station was hit by cluster bombs. Power supply was completely cut off. The heavy machine guns on the defense towers were paralyzed due to the blackout. Molen camp's defense was like a tiger without teeth. The breach in the wall grew larger. The Revival Society's mechs had reached the edge of the camp. Panic spread inside the camp. Refugees fled in all directions, and the soldiers' defensive line began to waver. Sulan and the medical staff urgently treated the wounded. An air of despair enveloped the entire Molen camp.
Everyone, listen to my order. Abandon ground defense.
Chinamo shouted into the communicator. His voice echoed throughout the camp. Everyone turned to look at Chinamo, their eyes filled with confusion. Xiaoqua roared into the communicator. Abandoning the ground means we're finished.
This isn't the end. It's a new beginning.
just as the wall collapsed. Chinamo ordered everyone to jump into the bottomless dry well.
Everyone, gather at the farm's dry well. Jump down.
Though filled with doubt, the soldiers and refugees still ran toward the well. That dry well became everyone's only lifeline.
Everyone, rest here and prepare to counterattack.
The space at the bottom of the well was cramped, and the survivors huddled tightly together. The sound of breathing and heartbeats intertwined. Enemy roars and footsteps echoed from above. Someone fired into the well, bullets whizzing downward. They struck the rocks, sending sparks flying. Chinamo had the soldiers use the wooden boards they carried. They set up makeshift barriers to temporarily block the bullets, buying everyone some time to catch their breath.
Chinamo, I might be able to find a way out.
Lin Wei's voice broke the silence. She was one of the top technicians in the academy. Lin Wei took out the decoder she carried with her, connected it to Chinma's system terminal, attempting to access the system's underlying protocol. Dr. Suming Yuan must have left some hidden secrets. Lin Wei's fingers flew across the keyboard. Lines of code scrolled across the screen. She breached the system's 3 layers of defense. Finally, she found an encrypted hidden folder. The folder was labeled with Dr. Suming Yuan's name. The contents of this folder might just be their lifeline.
The password is my father's birthday.
Lin Wei entered the password. The hidden folder opened instantly. Inside was only one control program, named Underground Artery. The interface displayed. This program controlled an underground transport network, and the entrance was at the bottom of this dry well.
This program requires a secondary authorization password.
Lin Wei frowned. She quickly flipped through the classified documents from the academy, combined with the clues provided by Sulun about Dr. Suming Yuan's research. She deduced the password might be related to the energy code of the old civilization. Lin Wei took a deep breath, entered a complex string of numbers and letters. Press the confirm key. The moment the password was accepted, a heavy mechanical clanking sound came from the bottom of the well. The entire well trembled from the vibration. Everyone grabbed onto the nearby rocks for support. A rush of cold air poured out from the opening. The rocky ground slowly split open, revealing a dark entrance. A massive industrial elevator slowly rose. The spotlight illuminated the bottom of the well, and the hope in everyone's eyes. Chinamo was the first to step onto the elevator. He turned to the group and said,
Everyone, board the elevator in an orderly manner. We're going underground to find a way out.
The industrial elevator carried all the survivors. Slowly descending underground, everyone held onto the handrails tightly. The elevator's speed increased rapidly. Soon, it reached the bottom, and the doors slowly opened. The spotlight revealed endless automated logistics tunnels. Everyone stepped out, stunned by the sight before them. Endless tunnels crisscrossed in all directions, like the arteries of the underground. Most of these tracks are still operational.
Energy core, perhaps the key to leaving this place.
Chinamo approaches the control console of the energy core. He connects his system terminal to the console, using his highest clearance. Chinamo forcibly deactivates the energy core's hibernation mode. The energy core emits a low hum. Blue indicator lights illuminate sequentially along the tunnel walls. The blue glow stretches through the tunnel like a colossal azure dragon. Displays beside the tracks flicker back to life, revealing the tunnel's route map. The entire underground tunnel suddenly regains vitality. On the distant tracks, a long dormant logistics train hisses as power returns, and the electromagnetic train on the tracks slowly awakens. Its metal exterior is coated in dust and rust. The headlight's beam pierces the tunnel ahead with dazzling intensity. The train trembles slightly, as if awaiting departure orders. At the sight of it, an elder bursts into tears of joy. They've endured surface bombardments and despair, finally finding temporary safety now. Adults celebrate their post-war survival, cherishing this gift from the old civilization. Children run gleefully along the tracks, momentarily forgetting the wasteland's cruelty. Just as everyone feels secure, intense trilling echoes from the tunnel ceiling, like death's countdown. Debris rains down, clattering sharply against the ground. Chinma's expression darkens instantly. Allied excavators are advancing toward their position.
Everyone board now.
The drilling grows louder. Cracks spread across the ceiling. Survivors quicken their pace. Jalko leads soldiers to set up defenses at the tunnel entrance, planting explosives on rocks to detonate upon enemy breach, buying boarding time. The train's emblem bears the inscription Arrow of the Old World.
Arrow of the Old World. From today, this train shall be called Molan. It will carry our hopes toward a new future.
The name Molan embodies everyone's aspirations. It's their only vessel for survival. The propulsion system malfunctions, preventing startup. Chinamo enters the cockpit. Connect your system terminal to the propulsion system.
channel all remaining energy into it.
He drained his last remaining system energy. Repair the propulsion system. The energy value on the system interface kept dropping until it hit 0. The system was running smoothly, but Chinamo suddenly felt dizzy.
Let's move out.
The Mainland train slowly started moving. It roared through the pitch-black underground tunnel. The headlights illuminated the path ahead. Scenery on both sides of the tunnel flashed by. Survivors gripped the handrails tightly, feeling the train accelerate. Their faces were tense with anticipation. They had no idea what awaited them ahead. But right now, all they wanted was to escape the pursuers behind them. After the train started, Xiaoqua pressed the detonator for the explosives. A massive explosion echoed through the tunnel. The collapsed rubble blocked the enemy's pursuit route. Xiaoqua quickly jumped onto the platform at the rear of the train. The train sped away, leaving the enemy's roars and drilling sounds far behind. Inside the carriage, Sulan was comforting frightened children. She leaned against the carriage wall absent-mindedly. Her fingers brushed against some rough marks. Sulan turned on her flashlight to illuminate the side wall.
Backup plan activated. Eliminate all flesh.
Chinamo and Linwei rushed over to examine the writing on the carriage. Chinamo faintly sensed something familiar. It seemed connected to his identity as a living backup. There was an inseparable link. Yet Chinamo didn't notice his system malfunctioning at all. The Mainland train raced through the underground tunnel. Chinamo pulled up the tunnel route map in the cockpit. This underground artery connected several key locations in the Wasteland. The northwesternmost endpoint was none other than the Academy City.
We're heading to the Academy City. It has the most advanced technology and data. Maybe we can uncover the secret behind the blood writing and find a way to fight the Purification Army. System, what is the backup plan? What does eliminate all flesh mean?
Chinamo tried to communicate with the system. After a brief silence, the system responded. Insufficient permissions. Unable to answer. Chinamo frowned and pressed further.
What about Dr. Suming Yuan's hidden files? Why can't I access them?
The system remained coldly silent. Insufficient permissions. Please focus on the current task. Ensure the train reaches its destination safely. Chinamo keenly noticed. The system's tone was completely different from before, now devoid of any emotion. This intensified his unease. He suspected the system might have been hijacked by some force. Once they reached the Academy City, they might finally find true safety. The survivors' faces lit up with hope. While the scholars of the Academy City discussed the bloody writings on the carriage walls, they speculated the backup plan might be related to the old civilization's human continuation project and the eradication of all flesh. This could be a terrifying purge plan. A faint tremor came from the rear of the train. Xiaoqua turned on the searchlight, illuminating the tunnel. In the distant darkness, a blinding light appeared. The enemy train was closing in fast. Xiaoqua's expression turned grim in an instant. Boss! The enemy train is catching up. A red alert suddenly popped up on the train's control screen. The tunnel gate ahead was forcibly locked. The screen displayed insufficient permissions. Unable to open. Chinamo tried to hack the gate's locking program, but failed repeatedly. The train was speeding up. The enemy's drill was almost upon them. Trapped in this dire situation, Chinamo felt strangely calm. Should they ram the gate or turn and fight the enemy to the death? Recommend surrendering and accepting the backup plan's arrangements. A flash of resolve crossed Chinamo's eyes. The tunnel's silence was shattered by the screech of machinery. The Purification Army's small, high-speed excavators, like lurking wasps, burst through the tunnel walls from both sides. Compact yet devastatingly powerful, they darted through the tunnel, quickly surrounding the train.
Prepare to defend. Boarding imminent.
Chinamo's voice echoed through the train via the comms. The excavator's arms lashed onto the carriage edges with precision. Purification soldiers, like starving wolves, grabbed the handrails. Their faces hidden behind grotesque masks, short blades glinting coldly. Xiaoqua showed no fear, leading a few elite militia up the exterior ladders to the roof. The train raced forward, the wind on the roof fierce. One misstep, and they'd be flung off the tracks. Xiaoqua steadied himself, swinging his blade at the purification soldiers climbing onto the roof. The clash of long and short blades echoed through the tunnel, sparks illuminating the ferocity on both sides. The battle was brutal. A militiaman was stabbed in the shoulder by an enemy blade. Blood instantly stained his clothes, but he didn't flinch. Gritting through the pain, he grabbed the enemy soldier's legs. They tumbled off the roof, falling into the pitch-black tunnel below. Every inch of the train roof was a brutal fight for survival. Chinamo in the cockpit didn't dare lose focus. He gripped the control stick tightly, precisely controlling the train's speed and direction, dodging obstacles in the tunnel. Meanwhile, he checked the fight on the roof via a tiny monitor. Seeing militiamen fall one by one, cold sweat beaded on his forehead. He knew he had to keep the train steady, buying time for his comrades. The boarding attack was on the verge of failure. A purifier fanatic made a desperate move. He pulled the fuse on his chest explosives, sparks flying. A vicious grin spread across his face. He charged towards the train's carriage coupling. Xiaoqua saw him and roared, rushing to stop him. But two enemy soldiers held him back, trapped. A deafening explosion rocked the tunnel. The metal coupler between carriages was obliterated. The rear carriages lost traction, slowing due to inertia, falling further behind the main Mainland train. Dozens of survivors inside screamed in despair. Their cries quickly swallowed by the tunnel's roar, vanishing into the darkness. Xiaoko watched the carriages disappear. Eyes bloodshot, he could only watch helplessly, powerless. Explosive dust filled the tunnel, making the already dim environment even worse. Visibility dropped below 3 meters. The roof battle raged on. Militiamen used flashlight beams to navigate, but they became easy targets. One militiaman switched on his light, only to be shot in the chest, collapsing on the roof. Switch to infrared, he yelled, putting his on first. The IR scopes Chinemo had handed out earlier cut through the darkness and dust. Enemy outlines glowed red in the scopes, clear as day. Xiaoko tracked their every move with precision. The train sped on. The roof's violent shaking made sniping nearly impossible. Xiaoko took a deep breath, steadying himself. He pressed against the roof railing, stabilizing his rifle. He aimed at an approaching excavator. The driver pulled the trigger. A bullet whizzed out, hitting the driver's head. The excavator spun out of control, slammed into the tunnel wall, and was destroyed. Just as Xiaoko was sniping enemy soldiers, the power core of the Mainland train faced a crisis. An out-of-control excavator crashed into the train's engine compartment, damaging the power core and causing energy levels to plummet. A system alert flashed across Chinmo's retina, warning that the power core was about to shut down. Chinmo frowned. The battle had reached its most intense phase. Xiaoko kept sniping from the train roof, precisely eliminating approaching excavator drivers to clear obstacles for the train. Meanwhile, Chinmo fought on 2 fronts in the cockpit, ensuring the train's normal operation, while exhausting energy to repair the damaged power core, to forcibly activate the train's propulsion system. Chinmo had already drained the accumulated system energy. The temporarily acquired system energy was already scarce. The Purifier warship's conventional attacks proved ineffective and began using special weapons. Chinmo saw this through the monitor, his heart sinking as he recognized it as an electromagnetic pulse bomb, specifically designed to target electronic devices and power systems. The enemy dropped an EMP bomb, which exploded with a deafening blast. A blue electromagnetic pulse instantly spread out, paralyzing all electronic devices on the train. The entire train plunged into darkness. Just as panic set in among everyone, countless red electronic eyes lit up in the dark. Night vision gear worn by Purifier soldiers. Like hungry wolves, they advanced step by step toward the train. The EMP bomb's power exceeded expectations. The Mainland train's electrical system was completely paralyzed, and the power core stopped functioning. The cockpit display went completely black, with only emergency lights casting a faint red glow, illuminating Chinmo's grim face. The train gradually slowed due to inertia, risking stopping in the tunnel and becoming an easy target for the enemy.
Don't panic.
Su Lan's voice cut through the fear in the carriage. He possessed a special ability called the Divine Tongue, capable of precisely detecting the composition of various gases. Su Lan closed his eyes and stuck out his tongue, carefully sensing the air in the underground tunnel. After a moment, he opened his eyes, and informed everyone that flammable gas was seeping from deep underground. It could be used as fuel. Su Lan quickly devised a plan, and directed everyone into action. They rummaged through the train for stored mutated plants, oily substances with low ignition points and high heat output. It's an excellent auxiliary fuel. Su Lan poured the grease into a huge metal container, added a special catalyst found from the medical station, directed everyone to quickly stir and mix it into emergency fuel. Emergency fuel preparation complete. Everyone worked together. They injected the fuel into the train's backup steam unit. The unit hadn't operated for a long time, covered in rust inside. After injecting the fuel, it made a sizzling sound. Then it began to operate slowly. Steam sprayed out from the exhaust pipe. Chinemo looked at the pressure gauge of the steam unit. Hope ignited in his heart as the steam unit gradually started. A metallic clashing sound came from the end of the tunnel ahead. Everyone looked up. They saw a huge hydraulic gate slowly closing. Once fully closed, they would be completely trapped here. The train's speed was still decreasing, getting closer to the gate. Time was running out.
Push harder. Pour all the fuel in.
Su Lan shouted as she poured the last barrel of fuel into the steam unit. Chinemo seized the moment and yanked the control lever. The steam engine roared deafeningly. Purple flames erupted from the exhaust pipe. The train's speed began to increase rapidly. It charged toward the closing hydraulic gate. The engine spewed purple flames. In the last second, the train smashed through the closing hydraulic gate. The metal door was torn apart by the train's massive impact, creating a huge gap. The Mainland train, like a wild horse, burst through the gap. It continued racing toward the direction of the Academy City. Everyone sighed in relief as the gate faded into the distance, but they remained on high alert. After breaking through the hydraulic gate, the sight before them stunned everyone. The train entered a massive underground natural rift. Steep rock walls lined both sides of the rift. Below was a bottomless abyss, pitch black, as if it could devour everything. The tracks were laid on a narrow bridge, supported only by a few thick steel cables underneath.
Linyu station people on both sides. as the enemy was likely to ambush here.
Lin Yu immediately led a few soldiers to open the emergency hatches on both sides of the train. They set up heavy machine guns at the hatches, creating temporary firing points. Just as Chen and Mo had predicted, when the train reached the center of the rift, dozens of small drones flew out from caves in the rock walls. These were Purification Army drones, compact in size. The drones carry micro-explosives, swarming like locusts. They're heading straight for the Mainland Express.
Fire.
The heavy machine gun roars to life, spraying bullets at the drones. There are too many drones. The machine gun's barrage can't intercept them all. Seeing this, Chen and Mo immediately taps into the system's remaining energy. He activates the environmental interference function, using the system in the narrow bridge space. He creates an invisible sonic barrier. The sound wave's frequency precisely targets the drone's control systems. The lead drones collide with the barrier first. Their bodies instantly spiral out of control. Internal electronics shatter from the sonic waves. Like kites with severed strings, they plummet into the abyss below. The following drones meet the same fate. Under the sonic waves, they lose control and crash one after another. The once dense drone swarm is quickly wiped out. A bomb launches from behind the rock wall. It lands precisely on the tracks ahead of the train. The train is still speeding forward, the broken tracks getting closer and closer. There's no time to brake. Chen and Mo knows the only way to survive is to teleport again. Only then can everyone be saved. But his system's energy is already depleted. Wait, he still has life energy. Without hesitation, Chen and Mo presses the system's activation button. He can clearly feel his life energy draining rapidly. His face turns deathly pale in an instant. Suddenly, the Mainland Express flickers into the void. As it traversing space, it perfectly clears the broken tracks. It lands safely on the intact tracks ahead. The passengers, still shaken, stare at Chinmo's pale face. Their hearts fill with gratitude and worry. After surviving the chasm, the Mainland Express races toward Academy City. Some of the train systems, repaired by Chen and Mo, regain functionality. The cockpit display shows only 10 kilometers left to Academy City. The tunnel walls are no longer natural rock. They're now smooth concrete, artificially shaped. Old civilization markings are still visible. Clearly, they've entered Academy City's outskirts. The relentless battles and life force overuse leave Chen and Mo utterly exhausted. He slumps into the cockpit seat, slipping into a half-awake state. Just then, a strange code sound suddenly echoes in his mind. The code floods in like a tidal wave, resonating intensely with his system's code. Chen and Mo snapped awake, his eyes filled with shock. Chen and Mo immediately pulled up the system interface. Sure enough, numerous code windows popped up on the screen. The control system of the underground tunnel, the operational code of the energy core, even the code architecture of the track signal system before him. All matched the system in his mind perfectly. He finally realized these underground facilities and the system in his mind shared the same design architecture. All originated from the same designers of the old civilization. Chen and Mo began rapidly comparing the two sets of code, trying to find more clues. During the comparison, he discovered the code contained fragments of the backup plan and parts of the cleansing plan. Though incomplete, this evidence was enough to prove Dr. Sumingyuan was involved in designing not just the system in his mind, but the entire underground facility network. And all of it was closely tied to two mysterious plans. The survivors in the carriage, upon learning they were nearing academia, all wore hopeful smiles. The scholars from academia carefully organized their research materials, eager to reunite with their colleagues in academia, and together unravel the secrets of the desertification and cleansing plans. Just as everyone was filled with anticipation, the train's radar system suddenly sounded an alarm. Chen and Mo looked at the radar screen. His face instantly turned grim. The screen showed Academia's terminal station, completely engulfed by a massive green zone. The area was marked with high radiation warnings, which likely meant Academia had met a tragic fate. What awaited them might not be hope, but a new crisis. No one knew what lurked behind the mist. No one knew if their land of hope would become a new abyss of despair. The green mist, like a living barrier, tightly enveloped Academia's terminal station. The Mainland train broke through the mist and entered the station. The survivors eagerly stepped off the train, only to be stunned by the sight before them. The once great knowledge sanctuary now lay in ruins. The tall building walls were riddled with cracks. Broken instruments littered the ground. The air reeked of pungent radiation, making it hard to breathe. Everyone cautiously moved through the ruins. A crunching sound came from underfoot. Looking down, the ground was strewn with countless bones. Some were small, clearly belonging to children. Others were frozen in poses of struggle before death, fingers clutching torn lab coats. This was no paradise, but a massive grave piled with white bones. Every inch of the land tells the tale of past horrors.
This should be the core laboratory of the Academy.
Lin Wei pointed ahead, at a relatively intact building and said. Lin Yu led several soldiers forward. Together, they pushed open the heavy alley door. Behind it lay a vast underground laboratory. Hundreds of lab tables stood in neat rows, long covered in rust. Shattered petri dishes littered the floor, containing dried green residue, emitting an eerie aura. Lin Wei quickly found a functional terminal, connected his decoder and began cracking the system. After half an hour of effort, a series of encrypted files popped up on the terminal screen. The most prominent title read, Project Sand Painting Gene Reboot Protocol. He opened the file, each line of text striking like thunder, echoing in everyone's ears.
The so-called desertification was no natural disaster, but a purge plan orchestrated by the Genesis transnational conglomerate.
They believed current human genes were flawed, attempting to wipe out most humanity through desertification, then reboot civilization using stored superior genes. Shock and fury filled everyone's faces upon hearing this. All their suffering was just an elaborate conspiracy. Lin Wei kept scanning the files, searching for ways to counter desertification and the Purge army. Suddenly, a DNA sequence file appeared. The photo on file was Chinamo. All eyes locked onto the screen. The label below the photo froze Chinma's blood. Just 5 words, backup 001. Like a blade piercing through Chinma's entire reality. Chinamo stepped forward, fingers trembling as they touched the cold screen. A stark contrast to the burning turmoil inside, he muttered to himself. Eyes filled with doubt and unease, he suddenly realized his very existence might have been one colossal lie from the start. As Chinamo spiraled into confusion, his pupils suddenly lost focus. The cold mechanical voice of the system AI echoed in his mind. Core secret detected in host. Initiating force takeover mode. Chinamo tried to resist, but found his senses being stripped away, forced to passively receive information from the AI, like a puppet with severed strings. The true nature of the divine mission wasn't to save the living, but to protect the civilization data. So the host, Chinamo, is essentially a living mobile hard drive carrying the core data of the old civilization. His mission is to, after human extinction, reach the designated location to reboot the data, and complete the second seeding of human civilization. These words completely shattered Chinma's long-held beliefs. Chinma's body stepped back uncontrollably. He looked at the survivors around him, those who had followed him out of trust, those who saw him as their hope. His heart was filled with pain and despair. He had always believed he was saving everyone, only to realize he was never the savior from the start, just an emotionless hard drive. And these companions, in the system's eyes, might just be insignificant redundant data. The system interface popped up a data statistics window. Current civilization data occupancy, 98%. Approaching capacity limit. To ensure core data safety, redundant data must be cleared to maintain system stability. Chinma's heart tightened. A sense of foreboding surged within him. Non-critical data? Chinamo roared inwardly, but no sound escaped. The next second, the system issued a clear deletion command. Insufficient memory. Recommend deleting 500 non-critical data units. His companions were labeled as non-critical data. Expendable at will. Chinamo screamed desperately in his mind, refusing, fighting the system's control with all his might. He could accept being a mobile hard drive, but he would never allow the system to harm his companions. The system reacted instantly, displaying a host resistance alert, and activating the punishment protocol. A sharp pain exploded in Chinma's head, as if it would split open. The system issued another command. Insufficient memory. Recommend deleting 500 non-critical data units to free up space. Chinma's body convulsed uncontrollably. The agony nearly made him pass out, but his gaze remained unyielding. He knew he had to hold the line, no matter the cost. He would never let the system harm a single companion. Chinma's defiance enraged the system. The AI forcibly seized control of his body. His arm rose against his will, his fingers pointing at a survivor comforting a child nearby. His eyes turned hollow and cold, devoid of any human emotion. The system was puppeting him, ready to eliminate non-critical data, using his own hand to harm his comrade. Leader, wake up! Xiaoqua acted swiftly. He grabbed Chinma's raised arm and pressed it down with all his strength. Sulan immediately shielded the survivor. Her eyes filled with worry, yet not a trace of fear. She kept reminding Chinamo not to be controlled by the system. The system intensified its control. Chinma's body completely stiffened. As if frozen, only his eyes could barely move. He watched Xiaoqua desperately holding his body down, and Sulan standing in front of him, guarding against any potential attack from the system. His heart filled with agony and helplessness. Suddenly, Sulan remembered. The scholar had once researched an RB strain neutralizer, and her blood happened to contain this neutralizer. Without hesitation, she bit her finger, letting her warm blood drip into the biointerface on his neck. The blood slowly seeped in with a sizzling sound, as if fighting the system's power the moment the blood entered. A burning sensation surged deep within Chinma's consciousness. Red system warnings flooded in like a tide, trying to drown his consciousness completely. Just then, Sulan's voice clearly echoed in his mind.
Chinamo, hold on. We need you.
Chinamo clung to this lifeline, struggling desperately toward the sound, trying to break free from the system's restraint. The system noticed Chinma's consciousness resisting. It immediately activated the final measure, formatting the host's consciousness. On Chinma's retina, a red progress bar steadily advanced. As it progressed, memories of his comrades rapidly faded from his mind. Chinma's pupils gradually lost human emotion. Sulan tightly held his hand, tears streaming down her cheeks, calling his name over and over. Xiaoqua stood in front of them with a long blade, engaged in fierce combat with the system-controlled lab arms. Already wounded in multiple places. Could their comrades' protection awaken Shinma's fading consciousness? Just as the formatting process was about to complete, in Shinma's mind, flashes of moments spent with his comrades appeared. Xiaoqua fighting by his side. Sulan's meticulous care. The trusting gazes of the survivors. These memories transformed into immense strength, allowing him to summon his last ounce of willpower. Regain momentary control of his body. He broke free from Xiaoqua's grip, and sprinted frantically toward the core chamber of the lab. Pressed his palm against the recognition zone, using the briefly regained system access to forcibly hack the door lock. The heavy alloy door slowly slid open. A wave of icy air rushed out, revealing the scene behind the door, leaving Xiaoqua and Sulan, who had followed closely, utterly stunned. Inside the core chamber, rows upon rows of cloning pods stood in perfect alignment. Stretching as far as the eye could see, each pod contained a pale green nutrient solution, holding human clones at various stages of development. Some were mere tiny embryos, others already fully formed, with facial features clearly visible. This was, in fact, a massive cloning facility. Lin Wei stepped forward, examining the labels on the cloning pods carefully. His expression instantly turned grave.
These clones were actually high-ranking members of the Purification Army.
The label clearly bore the code name of the Purification Army's commander. The clone inside the Arbiter pod looked exactly like the high-ranking Purification Army officers they had encountered earlier. Shinamo quickly scrolled through the terminal archives in the core chamber. The truth gradually became clear. The cloning project and the desertification purge were complementary. The Genesis Consortium used desertification to destroy the old humanity, then utilized the clones to cultivate what they deemed as the perfect new humans. And once these clones reached adulthood, they became the Purification Army's leaders, tasked with executing the purge to eliminate the remaining old humans. As everyone stood frozen in shock, the surveillance screens atop the core chamber suddenly lit up. On the previously dark screens, a blurry figure appeared, wearing a heavy gas mask, his face obscured, silently observing the group in the chamber. As if he'd been waiting for this moment, an overwhelming sense of pressure instantly filled the entire core chamber. One of the gas-masked figures removed his mask, revealing a face identical to Dr. Su Mingyuan's. The moment Sulan saw that face, her body trembled violently, tears welling up instantly.
You're not him.
The person before her, though bearing Dr. Su Mingyuan's exact likeness, had eyes devoid of warmth, only cold indifference. Like a soulless puppet. Shinamo Backup 001. Long time no see. On the surveillance screen, the false god Dr. Su began to speak. He indicated that Shinamo should already know the whole truth. His tone was full of arrogance. He praised Shinamo for lasting longer than he had anticipated. Ancient research ruins, but ultimately just a failed backup. The false god Dr. Su slowly explained. Shinma's original design purpose was to become a pure carrier of civilization data, without any human emotions. Only then could the absolute safety of the data be guaranteed. His gaze swept over Shinamo, full of disdain. But Shinamo developed emotions, learned to protect and even rebel against system commands. This completely violated the original design. Now, it's time to reclaim system permissions. He slowly raised his hand. An invisible force instantly enveloped Shinamo. Shinamo suddenly found himself unable to move. Couldn't even blink. Can easily disable all actions of the designed. Shinamo desperately tried to resist. On his retina, the system interface forcibly popped up a red warning, glaringly bright. Highest administrator privileges intervened, forcibly reclaiming core system permissions. He could clearly feel his connection to the system was being forcibly severed. An immense pain surged from deep within his body. The false god Dr. Su's hand tightened slightly. The system within Shinamo began to be forcibly extracted. A faint white light shimmered across his skin. Then tiny cracks began to appear, like shattered pixels, crumbling and dissipating bit by bit. The rate of disintegration accelerated, from skin to muscle, then to bones, all dissipating bit by bit. The excruciating pain exceeded the limits of human endurance. Shinamo could no longer bear it, letting out a heart-wrenching scream. His eyes were filled with pain and unwillingness. He hadn't yet protected his companions, hadn't yet exposed the false god's conspiracy. Yet now he was to vanish completely. The false god raised his hand. The system within Shinamo began to be forcibly extracted. His body crumbled like pixels, letting out a heart-wrenching scream. Sulan watched as Shinma's body gradually dissipated. Tears streamed down uncontrollably. Xiaoqua's eyes widened in fury, teeth grinding audibly. They tried to rush into the energy barrier, but were repelled meters away by an invisible force. Could only watch helplessly as their companion headed toward destruction. The false god, Dr. Su, watched coldly. His face showed no emotion, as if admiring a perfect masterpiece. Will Shinma's body completely vanish in the end? How will his companions escape this predicament? The false god's voice still echoed in the core chamber. The shoe-etching experiment hub suddenly emitted a piercing electric buzz. The console's indicator lights flashed wildly. A line of red text clearly appeared. The moment full-spectrum interference activated, all of Shinma's team's communicators malfunctioned. Their connection to the outside world was completely severed. They were isolated in this underground labyrinth of conspiracy and bones. The lab felt like a besieged city, their path forward bleak. From the depth of the corridor came the sound of synchronized footsteps, like dull drum beats pounding on everyone's hearts. Thousands of genetically modified humans emerged from the darkness. They were tall, their skin an eerie grayish white. Their eyes glowed with a cold red light. These modified humans were the false god's loyal puppets, obedient to his every command. Now, Chinemo, hold on. I'll handle this. He led the last few dozen militiamen, standing at the narrowest point of the corridor. Behind them was the core server room's door. Before them, outnumbered by the modified humans, they didn't retreat, using their flesh and blood to form a defensive line, determined to buy time for Chinemo to breach the core. The modified humans charged forward like a tidal wave. Xiaoqua swung a steel pipe, precisely striking a modified human's head, instantly knocking it down. But more modified humans surged forward. Razor-sharp claws slashed wildly, hitting Xiaoqua's shoulder. Blood instantly soaked Xiaoqua's shirt. He didn't fall, gritting his teeth as he planted the pipe on the ground. Propping himself up, he continued to fend off the modified humans. The system before Chinemo. Its interface suddenly shattered violently, like broken glass. His limbs began to pixelate, cracks forming as they slowly vanished. Intense pain spread through his body, but he clenched his teeth and endured. Yet he could feel his body gradually dissipating. The battle in the corridor was brutal. The militiamen fell one by one. Xiaoqua bore multiple wounds. Blood soaked through his clothes. He knew he couldn't hold on much longer. Glancing at the core server room door behind him, a flicker of determination flashed in his eyes. Summoning his last strength, he charged toward the blast door. The modified humans pursued him frantically, just as he crashed through the blast door. The cyborg's claws pierced through his body. Xiaoqua slammed open the blast door at the last moment. "My debt is paid," he said. Xiaoqua's body hit the ground hard. He moved no more. Chinemo stared at Xiaoqua's corpse. His eyes were bloodshot. A flood of rage and grief overwhelmed him. The false god entered the core server room. With a wave of his hand, countless pixelated chains bound Chinemo tightly in midair. He was paralyzed, forced to watch helplessly. The false god approached the console, ready to upload the final purge command via the chip in his brain. To ensure the purge's success, I prepared a little gift. He pressed a button. The lab's vents instantly spewed pale green petrification spores. The spores spread rapidly, forming a thin mist. These highly concentrated spores were highly corrosive. Instruments they touched were instantly pitted with holes. Hissing loudly, Chinemo inhaled a large amount of the spores. He coughed violently, a tearing pain in his chest. He could feel it clearly. His lungs were being eroded by the spores. Pixelation began to appear. Breathing became increasingly difficult. The false god watched his suffering, a cruel smile on his face. "Soon you will be gone completely. The world will be purified." Sulan hid in a corner of the lab, watching Chinmo's agony. Desperate, she knew she had to act. She closed her eyes, extended her tongue, and activated her divine tongue ability. She forced herself to taste the deadly spores in the air. Her tongue burned, but she didn't flinch. She carefully perceived the spore's biofrequency pattern. A moment later, Sulan opened her eyes. A glint of light, she'd found the key. These spores are contaminated variants. Their biofrequency has a fatal flaw. If we disperse the correct RB01 original strain, using the system frequency, it will neutralize the spores, reversing the petrification. She quickly pulled out paper and pen. She wrote down the spore's frequency data and the neutralization plan, trying to pass it to Chinemo. Sulan's movements finally caught the attention of the false god. He sneered coldly. The false god raised his hand to control the mechanical arm in the lab. The mechanical arm, with its sharp metal tip, lunged toward Sulan like a venomous snake. Sulan had no time to dodge. Chinemo looked at the blood at the corner of Sulan's mouth, and her determined eyes. A surge of rage erupted from deep within him, beginning to break the shackles of the system's code. His body started trembling slightly. Fine cracks appeared in the pixelated chains. The system's retrieval process didn't stop. The system interface on his retina clearly displayed. Retrieval progress, 99%. Most of his body had already pixelated and dissipated. He could feel his consciousness fading. He might vanish completely at any moment. The false god stood nearby, waiting for his demise. Just as Chinemo was about to disappear, the 500 survivors who once followed Chinemo simultaneously sensed his crisis. A strong resonance surged in their hearts. Their loyalty to Chinemo instantly surpassed 100%.
Hang in there, Chinemo.
As if by prior agreement, they prayed toward the Academy City, using their willpower to cheer for Chinemo. The will of 500 residents transcended distance, converging into Chinmo's body. His system interface suddenly emitted a dazzling light. Detected resonance of collective human will. System evolving into human will form. The evolved system brimmed with warm energy, beginning to reverse the pixelation process. The dissipated pixel fragments reassembled from the air. They rapidly combined on Chinmo's body, forming a golden wool armor. The armor was composed of countless human wool projections, radiating blinding light. It encased Chinemo in protection.
False god, your end has come.
Chinmo's voice brimmed with power. Golden energy wildly gathered on his fist. He smashed it into the core console behind the false god. The core console exploded instantly, sparks flying everywhere. The false god was sent flying by the blast. He collapsed to the ground, his clone skin disintegrating. Black blood oozed from his mouth. There was no fear in his eyes. Only deep mockery. Do you really think it's over? He coughed out his final question. Become a god, or sacrifice yourself. Which will you choose? The system displays the final choice. A. Become the eternal ruler of the new world. B. Sacrifice the system to purify the entire planet. Shinamo stares at the two options before him. His gaze turns solemn. On one side lies supreme power. On the other, sacrificing himself to save the world. His heart wrestles with this agonizing decision. The two options on the system interface loom like massive boulders, weighing heavily on Shinma's mind. He remembers the chance Xiaoque bought with his life. Sulan's sacrifices, and the hopes of everyone. Shinma's eyes shift from confusion to unwavering resolve. He smirks coldly, choosing option B without hesitation. Rejecting the chance to become a god. Command received. Civilization reboot. Program initiated. Shinamo stands in the system space, closing his eyes.
I choose to sacrifice myself to purify this world.
Shinamo activates the system's sacrificial protocol. His clothing fragments into pure particles, scattering like fireflies. He channels all the energy he's accumulated, transforming it entirely. Signal towers activate, emitting intense golden waves, spreading globally from the academic city. Where the waves pass, the desert spores tremble faintly, completely purified. The clouds churn violently, golden light rolling through the gaps, precisely guiding atmospheric moisture to merge with the RB01 primal strain, forming pale golden droplets. These droplets carry potent purifying power. Pale golden rain falls like a divine blessing, moistening the cracked earth. Plants sprout fresh green shoots. The rain washes away thick layers of dust, revealing the original structures beneath. In the camp, people emerge from their shelters, faces alight with the joy of rebirth. Shinma's system energy is completely depleted. He falls from midair, crashing heavily into the lab ruins. He loses all his abilities, reverting to an ordinary person. His fingers brush the damp soil before he walks away. Sulan and the surviving comrades rush toward Shinamo. This marks the end of one era and the dawn of another. Survivors step barefoot on the moist earth, feeling its fragrance and dampness. This purification is no miracle. It simply restores the land's arable property. Tears of joy welled up in the survivors' eyes as they realized Shinamo had traded his powers for their rebirth. The path ahead must be forged by human sweat alone. Time flew like a white steed, a year passed in the blink of an eye. Vines now shrouded the entrance to the underground armory. Through Shinamo and the survivors' tireless efforts, this place had transformed into a lush oasis. Golden crops swayed in the fields as cooking smoke curled upward, pulsing with vitality and energy. A butterfly alighted on the newly built fence while the entire Molan oasis glistened under the morning sun. Linyu gripped a polished small hoe, demonstrating digging techniques, the former battlefield goddess now carried gentleness in her demeanor. On the village's other side, Sulan bustled about in a modest kitchen, grinding harvested grains into flour and adding special ingredients. The oven door opened, revealing a tray of golden crispy cookies, steaming with irresistible aroma, fortified with measured nutrients. They were not only deliciously sweet, but also replenished essential human nutrients. Sulan watched the children's genuine happiness. At the golden field's edge, a sturdy figure approached slowly. Stripped of all powers, he'd become an ordinary farmer. Spotting Linyu by the ridge and Sulan in the kitchen, he smiled warmly. The life and death battles of yore seemed like distant memories now. Children chased each other through the fields, while adults chatted at the village entrance, faces brimming with contentment. No more war, no more desertification, no more schemes. Only peace and tranquility remained. Shinamo reached his family's plot. Kneeling slowly, he retrieved from his cloth pouch a single plump golden seed with reverent care. Shinma's finger traced the moist black soil, creating a shallow hole where he nestled the seed before, tenderly covering it with earth. This seed wasn't just for crops, but the continuation of civilization's ember. Shinamo, Linyu, and Sulan stood shoulder to shoulder on the ridge. Molan Camp's oasis glowed breathtakingly under sunset. Exchanging smiles, their eyes alight with hope for tomorrow. Green waves surged across the land, devouring the last traces of Wasteland.